Somebody in your family had a sandwich they made the same way every single time. Maybe it was deviled ham on soft white bread, or a fried bologna round with a smear of mustard that curled at the edges when it hit the skillet. You never asked for the recipe because there was no recipe. It was just lunch. For most of the 20th century, the midday meal in America ran on a short list of foods that everybody understood. Diners chalked them on boards above the counter. School cafeterias spooned them onto divided trays. Mothers wrapped them in wax paper and handed them over before the screen door slammed shut. Nobody wrote these meals down because nobody imagined they could disappear. But they did. One by one, the ingredients got harder to find, the lunch counters closed, and a whole generation of midday cooking slipped out of daily life without a farewell. 100 famous lunches that have faded into history. Number 25. Tomato soup with a grilled cheese triangle. The soup came from a number 10 can of Campbell's condensed, thinned with whole milk in a steamed kettle the size of a kitchen sink. The cheese was a half slice of American on white bread, grilled in butter on a flat top until your bread shattered when you bit into it. Lunch ladies cut every sandwich on the diagonal because the triangle dipped cleaner than the square. The ladle held 4 ounces, served into a 5-ounce bowl with a paper napkin folded under it. You dipped one corner, then another, and learned the order by 2nd grade. Today, the same lunch would fail 4 federal rules at once. Whole milk in the soup, white bread, butter on the griddle, and canned sodium together push past 740 milligrams. And whole grain bread now carries the sandwich. The original belongs to memory. Welsh rarebit was once the sophisticated cousin of plain cheese toast, transforming simple ingredients into something that felt almost elegant for lunch alone. The dish began with a thick sauce made from sharp cheddar melted slowly with butter, a splash of beer or milk, and a dash of Worcestershire sauce. This golden bubbling mixture was poured over toasted bread and placed under the broiler until the edges turned brown and crispy. For seniors living alone in the 1950s and 1960s, Welsh rarebit represented an affordable indulgence requiring only pantry staples. The cheese provided protein and calcium, while the toast offered filling carbohydrates that satisfied without waste. One slice was often enough for lunch, making it economical for single-serving preparation. The dish carried memories of lunch counters where it appeared on menus as something special. Though rarely made today, Welsh rarebit proved that cheese on toast could become a meal worthy of sitting down to enjoy. Cold biscuit sandwiches with molasses or fatback were the kind of lunch that got a man through a 12-hour day with nothing but grit and habit to lean on. The biscuits were always cold by the time the tin lunch pail opened, but that did not matter much. If there was molasses in the pantry, you spread it thick for sweetness. If there was only fatback, you tucked in a slice or two for salt and smoke. The biscuits themselves were usually baked from leftover dough at dawn, made tough enough to hold together through a morning in a jacket pocket. By noon, the edges had gone soft, and the smell of lard or syrup made the whole meal feel like home. These sandwiches were a bridge between the breakfast table and the next hard stretch of fieldwork, something made from what little you had but worth every bite. Each one carried a taste of someone's kitchen, and even in its plainness, it was love in its simplest form, wrapped in wax paper and patience. Sloppy Joe on buttered bun was the undisputed king of the 1960s cafeteria, a messy mix of sweet tomato sauce and crumbled ground beef piled high on a soft white bun that never stood a chance. The sauce soaked into the bread until it reached that perfect level of soggy where every bite dripped down your fingers and the cafeteria napkins were never strong enough to help. The smell of simmering beef and tangy ketchup filled hallways before the lunch bell even rang, making the line for this sandwich stretch past the milk cooler. Children loved it because it was warm, filling, and just a little rebellious, a meal that made a delightful mess when you were supposed to be neat. Teachers braced themselves for stained shirts and sticky desks, but rarely complained because everyone wanted one too. It was a dish that tasted like pure fun, and its rich sauce still lingers in memory long after the last cafeteria tray was cleared. Potatoes had more use than just what was under all the layers. Once peeled, people would often fry the potato skins as a midday snack. Nothing would ever go to waste in homes back then, as you must have gathered by now. If they can make stuff out of sausage drippings and drain the fat from bacon to reuse, frying up some potato skins does not seem that out of the box at all. These fried skins were the perfect sidekick to potato pancakes, and the fact that the skins had a lot of health benefits made it all the more appealing. Things like this really helped to keep appetites in check, and that meant that the financial situation of the home would be calmer too. We're going to start our list off with a plowman's lunch, which is actually a dish best served cold. This little work of art features a lot of sharp cheddar cheese, which definitely makes it a hit with fans of dairy. The next thing that makes a plowman's lunch so zesty and flavorful is pickled onions and a good layer of Branston pickles for safe measuring. Now all you need is some crusty bread and some hard-boiled eggs, and you pretty much have lunch served. It was more common for people to take things like cold cuts of meat, pork pies, or an apple slice for some variety in the food, but eggs were the one thing you would see non-stop with this dish. It's a pretty well-balanced blend of different flavors. You have a nice little vinegary tang from the pickles, but it doesn't get overwhelming thanks to the cheese helping to cut through all that. Eventually, the cheese mixes really well with the bread, and after it sets and coats the pickles in there, you get an incredibly delicious meal. This was a meal right out of the 50s and 60s, and funnily enough, this was something that was marketed by the Cheese Bureau in Britain so that cheese sales could go up a lot. And so the thing back then with lunch was that you really wanted it to be portable. You didn't have a little deli on the corner with a killer quesadilla or Uber Eats back then. Dishes were often made with energy and transportability in mind. One of the most popular things that people would ever eat back in the day was bread with meat drippings. Despite what you might think, this is really just stale bread with leftover drippings that were squeezed out. People weren't fond of letting the drippings go to waste back then. They could be used as a cooking fat, as a dip, or as a coating to increase flavor. Poor people would generally try their best to keep a steady supply of them. This was also one of the most popular meals to come out of the Great Depression because of how economical it was. It also luckily worked better with bran and rye bread instead of the fluffy, white wheat flour one we're used to. That meant that the dish was able to hit a bigger audience because a lot of people were barred from ever being able to buy fluffy white flour-based bread. These were okay, really. Just an average breakfast to get you started, but they were wonderful at stretching out the pantry and making sure things stay for as long as possible. Also, if there's ever something you need toast for, but you're just out of butter, syrup, or whatever, this is a pretty okay alternative. A name you might not hear very often in the cooking world, as far as French cuisine is concerned at least, is Marie-Antoine Carême, but you can thank her for some amazing dishes such as the vol au vent. This is actually something that got so popularized in American cookbooks in the mid-20th century. In the 1970s, when a national interest in foreign cooking really started popping off in America, there were a lot of trends centered around haute cuisine, and especially things you would find in premium French restaurants. In French-American communities, a vol au vent was a typical Saturday lunch that you would find being served up by your grandmother. Marie-Antoine Carême is a legendary French chef, and a reason she got that acclaim was because she managed to make up dishes that would suit the average household. Vol au vent is actually not really something you'd find at a five-star restaurant or on the upper end of what your wallet could afford. Most people would treat this like a party meal, something to serve at cocktail parties or New Year's ones. It was just puff pastry filled in with chicken, mushrooms, and creamy sauces, but it blended all of those together to make a really warm and earthy taste, which makes it perfectly suited to something you'd associate with your grandma's table. Rustic vegetable soup was the ultimate clean-out-the-fridge meal. It was simple and delicious, and as an added bonus, you didn't need a plan. Grab whatever vegetables you had lying around, carrots, potatoes, celery, basically anything that hasn't gone to mush. One of the great things about this soup is that it is no fuss from beginning to end. Our ancestors from the Great Depression era weren't aiming for fancy restaurant vibes, but rather just some homey, wholesome-feeling goodness. You didn't really have a specific recipe, but more of a suggestion on how the preparation went. You could add beans, pasta, or that half-used zucchini you've been side-eyeing in the pantry. The base was solid broth, maybe a couple of herbs and some salt. Even if you weren't the most talented chef, this wasn't a problem. All you needed to do to make this lunch was to chop up some veggies, toss them in a pot, and let them simmer. Voila! All of a sudden, you've made a meal that could feed a family for days. Your kitchen will smell like you've been working on that lunch for hours, but instead, it was the stove that has been doing all the heavy lifting. Rustic vegetable soup was cheap, healthy, and a great way to use up all odds and ends before they got bad. So next time your veggie drawer is looking tragic, remember, rustic vegetable soup is here to save your grocery budget. From the heart of Alabama come the fried chicken and biscuits that hold a significant place in soul food restaurants. Battered chicken, deep-fried in oil to achieve a perfect golden brown crust paired with fluffy biscuits, were the new favorite dish across Alabama in the 1970s. From roadside cafes to diners across the state, chefs put this dish on the menu for an affordable price in the 70s. Here we go! Pizza first appeared in American school cafeterias in the late 1950s, tailor-made to appeal to children with rich, savory toppings such as pepperoni and sausage. Originally from Italy, this beloved dish was transformed in the U.S. with hearty, high-fat ingredients, providing a quick and satisfying student meal. Assembled with hand-stretched dough, slathered with tomato sauce, and layered with mozzarella and meats, the pizza is baked at high temperatures. This process melds the flavors and textures into a delicious offering with a crispy crust and a melted cheese topping. The combination of carbohydrates, protein, and fats met the nutritional needs of busy school environments efficiently, making pizza a consistent hit among students who relished the comforting taste and filling nature of each slice. Speedies are also something you would find at gatherings for family or just friends, mostly because no party is complete without a good platter of meat skewers going around a few drinks. So, mostly people would enjoy these most when the meat was lamb, but some areas like California would use chicken or beef too. It was really the grilling where the magic happened. These plates of Speedies set the mood in a party alight. It was a taste that, when they experienced it, people at a party knew that they were in for a really good time. The kind of dish that gets a crowd excited and hungry. There were even Speedafests in Binghamton and all around New York in general. It was a part of the local culture that no big celebration was really complete without. The reason it got popular wasn't just because of a regional preference in New York, though. The dish was bold, tangy, and citrusy, and it could double as an amazing sandwich, too. You would find these in street stalls throughout New York, as well as at homes, but nowadays the dish has faded away into irrelevance. Not much is known about the Arizona cheese crisp, besides the fact that cheese crisps are beloved appetizers served during lunchtime. A rather peculiar dish made out of an open-faced flour tortilla that is covered in shredded cheese was extremely popular amongst Mexican restaurants in Arizona. Fried chicken patties were introduced to American schools in the 1980s and quickly became a favorite due to their similarity to popular fast food. These patties are made from ground chicken mixed with spices, then breaded with flour and breadcrumbs to create a crispy outer layer. The frying process transforms these prepared patties into golden, crunchy delights with a juicy interior, typically served as sandwiches or with sides like fries. The method of preparing these patties is well suited to the high-volume requirements of school cafeterias, involving simple steps that can be executed quickly: mixing, forming, breading, and frying. This efficiency ensures that delicious hot meals can be served promptly, reducing wait times and maximizing student satisfaction during lunch breaks. Sloppy Joes are basically ground beef, onions, and either tomato sauce or ketchup, all jazzed up with some brown sugar and maybe a dash of Worcestershire sauce. This messy delight started out in Sioux City, Iowa, back in the 1930s, whipped up by a cook named Joe. The name Sloppy Joes was actually coined due to the messiness of the sandwich, quickly becoming a humorous yet appetizing moniker. They're super tangy and a bit sweet, making them a hit with pretty much everyone who tries them. Plus, they're cheap and easy to make in big batches, perfect for feeding a crowd without breaking the bank. You'll find people tweaking them with bell peppers, garlic, or chili powder depending on where you are. They were everywhere in school cafeterias because kids loved them and they were easy to make in bulk. Number 24, fish sticks with tartar sauce. They came frozen in a wax-lined case of 200, breaded, golden, and rectangular, baked on a sheet pan for 15 minutes at 400 degrees. Friday was fish day in most American school districts because the Catholic kids needed the option, and once your kitchen was set up for them, the rule stayed for everyone. The tartar sauce was a paper cup of mayonnaise and pickle relish from the lunch lady's own bowl. 3 sticks per tray, a scoop of mac and cheese on the side, a square of cornbread. Kids who grew up watching Friday fish trays slide down the line still smell the lemon wedges when they pass a freezer aisle. The fish came from Atlantic pollock fillets caught off Massachusetts. By 2014, the breading carried too much sodium for elementary trays. The recipe simply walked off the menu. Sardines on toast carried an honest simplicity that seniors living alone appreciated for both nutrition and economy. A small tin of sardines, often purchased for less than 20 cents, provided complete protein and enough substance for a satisfying midday meal. The preparation required nothing more than opening the can, arranging the fish on buttered toast, and adding perhaps a squeeze of lemon juice. The sardines came packed in oil, tomato sauce, or mustard, each variety offering different flavor profiles for minimal cost. Many seniors kept tins stacked in their pantries, knowing this lunch could be assembled in under 5 minutes without heating anything beyond the toast. The fish's salty richness paired perfectly with soft white bread, creating a combination that filled the stomach without elaborate cooking. For those watching pennies stretch across fixed incomes, sardines represented remarkable value. This humble lunch reminded many of simpler times when canned fish was considered perfectly respectable fare. Cornbread and buttermilk in a jar was one of those hill country meals that told you everything about the people who made it. It was called a liquid lunch, though there was nothing fancy or store-bought about it. Crumbled cornbread went into a glass jar, and then cold buttermilk was poured over it until it soaked every crumb. On hot days, that jar came straight from a spring house or well bucket, cool enough to wake a man right up. You would shake it, maybe add a pinch of salt, and drink it thick like a meal. It was cheap, simple, and almost impossible to ruin, which is exactly why it became a favorite among farmers, mill hands, and anyone working under the sun. Some swore it was better than anything cooked fresh because it filled your belly without slowing your body down. It might not look like much, but that mixture of tangy milk and gritty bread was the South's version of endurance, comfort disguised as thrift. Fish Stick Fridays were a weekly ritual, a nod to the no meat on Friday tradition that gave school kitchens a chance to break out the frozen boxes. Golden fish sticks lined up neatly on metal trays, their breadcrumb crusts crisp from the industrial ovens, while the insides steamed softly. Tartar sauce cups were passed along the counter, and a squeeze of lemon was a rare treat when the budget allowed. The smell of baked fish mingled with the scent of fresh rolls and cartons of milk, a combination that only children of that era can truly appreciate. Some kids swapped their sticks for extra dessert, while others built towers of fish and bread on their plates, daring friends to take a bite. It was a meal that taught patience because those fish sticks stayed hot long after you sat down. The memory of that crunchy first bite remains sharp, a taste of childhood Fridays when the weekend was just a bell away. Chicken a la king and puff pastry was another little nugget of French culture and cuisine that served us pretty well. So the idea here this time was to stuff creamy chicken and mushrooms into one single pastry, and there would be lots of these individual pastries, each stuffed to the brim. By now, we're talking about somewhere along the 70s. America's always been a big fan of cream. There's really no denying that, but I would say that we've warmed up to mushrooms a lot more than we used to. I don't think they were not popular, but they weren't exactly a standout ingredient that would be making anyone's top 10 or top 5 either. Americans were changing their palates regarding mushrooms thanks to 2 things, though. One, they had built up a fondness for it thanks to how many Americans, especially ones living on the edges of urban hubs, relied on foraging wild mushrooms. 2, things like cream soups, such as cream of mushroom soups, were already making the pairing of cream and mushrooms popular. This take on puff pastry wasn't exactly a long shot, since the stage was pretty much mostly set. However, I think most people have opted for things like sandwiches and ordering takeout at lunch now, or just getting a coffee. Work cultures really changed, and having a full-fledged meal during your 15-minute break isn't the most appealing option to a lot of people nowadays. And that's why stuff like meat hand pies got as popular as they did. Not only were they really easy to stuff in your bag and walk around, but they were resistant to getting spoiled, so they could stay in there for quite a while. If you got your break late, no worries. As far as the taste went, it goes down just like any meat pie, though most people were fond of using different cuts of pork and ground beef. A historical act about these is that during the 19th century, they were pretty much the ideal lunch for Cornish tin miners. The reason was that since mine workers usually had dirty hands, they would grip the pie by the edge of the crust and eat the rest, throwing away the part that got dirty. They got popular because of how satisfying the flavor is, though. It's rich and meaty, and that buttery crust with a peppery seasoning only helps to elevate this humble pie into a proper midday lunch. Another thing that people relied on rather frequently was cornmeal mush. I can't begin to tell you how much people loved cornmeal. From peasants to farmers to Native Americans and everybody in between the West and East, cornmeal was something that had really spread. It was like that one food of the nation that everyone just knew. Corn is one of the few things that grows as easily as it does in the United States, and it means that the potential for mass use is so strong. Cornmeal mush might not do well by today's standards because it's a rustic, simple dish, but back then this mush was enough to make your morning a bit more optimistically. When a lot of people had nothing else to eat, they would often turn to cornmeal. When people had no way of stretching their pantries until the next salary, there was little to go for. Corn was one of the few things people could make in 100 different ways, and it was virtually free or literally free if you had your own farming grounds. I don't need to tell you about how much America and the West in general love rice pudding. It's been something that's helped rural and urban populations get through some disastrously tough times, as well as a warm memory from childhood for a lot of people. One variation of the classic rice pudding was a Swedish rice ring, which would mostly be served at Christmas or a family get-together, but it eventually extended into daily use too. The dish first started off as something you'd only find in Scandinavian communities, and they'd really make heaps of the stuff. Enough to go around a big family of 6 or 8 with a bowl for each, and it makes sense too since it was made using some pretty average ingredients. Stuff like rice, milk, and cream were all you needed to get a Swedish rice ring going. The way it differed from normal rice pudding is in how the dish was originally always made with some kind of spice and topped with fruit or served alongside jam. Later on, when it expanded past the Scandinavian locale and got adopted into widespread use, people started using nutmeg and cinnamon as well. Some scant cookbooks might still recall the dish and the times where it was a great comfort meal, but a lot of the new ones don't really remember it anymore. Depression-era mac and cheese was a budget-friendly comfort food that made you feel like you were living large on a dime. While today's mac and cheese might be full of fancy and expensive cheeses, back in the day, it was all about making the most out of basic ingredients. A boxed pasta, some milk, and only if you were lucky, some cheese. But you better pull that smile off your face. It wasn't the gooey, cheesy kind that we know of today. It was more of a humble, lightly cheesy dish that could fill you up, don't get me wrong. The trick was stretching those precious bits of cheese as far as humanly possible. People would thin it out with milk or even water. And if money was really, really tight, they would use flour to make a roux, a mixture of flour and fat that was used to thicken sauces. It definitely wasn't gourmet, but it was cheap, and the most important of all, it was food. Even with such limited sources, this dish managed to be a crowd pleaser, especially with kids, who were just excited to be eating pasta. Depression-era mac and cheese was a smart way to turn a few simple ingredients into a meal that seemed indulgent, even if it was light years away from today's extravaganza. But you have to admit, sometimes you don't want that fully spiced-up mac and cheese. Sometimes you crave a simple canned version that won't make you regret eating it later. And that's exactly what Depression-era mac and cheese achieved. Alaska reindeer sausage was unlike any sausage America had ever seen, so it is no wonder that this grilled reindeer sausage that was served in a bun with sauerkraut became a go-to lunch for people. The lunch was especially served in summers when several vendors and restaurants started grilling a mix of beef, pork, and reindeer meat on a bun with sauerkraut. Boiled hot dogs have been a long-standing favorite in American school cafeterias, known for their simple, tasty, and quick preparation. Made from a blend of beef and pork, these hot dogs are seasoned and boiled, served in a soft bun with a variety of condiments like ketchup, mustard, and relish. This cooking method is particularly effective in school environments as it allows for hot dogs to be prepared en masse and kept warm. The simplicity of boiled hot dogs makes them a reliable choice for school cafeterias, where the lunch period is often brief and the demand for quick service is high. Additionally, the familiarity and ease of customization of hot dogs meet diverse student preferences, making them a popular and comforting choice. This meal option not only satisfies hunger swiftly, but also aligns with the logistical needs of serving hundreds of students. Starting with a masterpiece of lunchtime tradition, the tuna melt on rye holds a storied spot in American cuisine. This beloved sandwich stacks a hearty tuna salad, crafted from a blend of canned tuna, creamy mayonnaise, and a select mix of seasonings, beneath a slice of melting cheese, all nestled between two slices of rye bread and grilled to crispy, golden perfection. Its origins trace back to the 1950s in Charleston, South Carolina, where it was born from a happy accident involving a chef and a mishap with tuna salad landing on a grilling cheese sandwich. This serendipitous event led to the tuna melt's rapid rise to fame, making it a favorite across diners and cafes throughout the nation. The construction is simple. Tuna salad and cheese are layered on rye bread, which is then grilled until the bread crisps beautifully and the cheese turns deliciously gooey, a testament to how the best culinary creations can stem from the most unexpected incidents. Back in 1958, Vince DiDomenico decided to bless us with rice-a-roni, branding it as the San Francisco treat. This nifty dish combines rice and vermicelli, browned up in butter, then simmered down in a savory broth. Talk about a tasty side dish that clicked with American families. The big sell was how versatile and easy it was to make, perfect for the fast-paced lifestyle folks were leading. With a lineup of flavors like chicken, beef, and Spanish, there was something for everyone. The catchy jingle from its commercials, Rice-A-Roni, the San Francisco treat, helped cement its place in American culture. The best part? Just sauté and simmer. Even though its heyday has seen a bit of a dip with the rise of health-conscious eating and more quick prep meal options, Rice-A-Roni still stands out as a hallmark of culinary creativity from back in the day. Number 23, Salisbury steak with brown gravy. The patty was beef and breadcrumb, shaped in a press and frozen flat, then baked from frozen for 40 minutes in a deep hotel pan. The gravy came from a sealed pouch of mushroom and onion base, mixed with hot water and stirred with a wooden paddle long enough to coat the back of a ladle. Cafeteria recipes from the 1988 USDA quantity cookbook called for 1 pound of meat to feed 5 kids, which made Salisbury steak the cheapest hot entree on the line. You either loved it or refused to eat it, and the lunch ladies could tell by 3rd grade which side of that line you were on. The patty went on mashed potatoes with green beans alongside, the gravy ladled across both. By the time the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act took effect in 2012, Salisbury steak carried more sodium than the new rules allowed. The wooden paddles went into storage. Number 20. Cottage cheese and canned peaches became a lunchtime staple for seniors seeking something cool, refreshing, and requiring absolutely no cooking. This combination appeared on countless plates during the 1950s and 1960s when cottage cheese was promoted for its protein content and digestibility. A scoop of creamy cottage cheese surrounded by golden peach halves created a meal that felt lighter than sandwiches but remained filling enough to sustain energy through the afternoon. The sweetness of the syrup-packed peaches balanced the mild tang of the cheese, creating flavors that complemented rather than competed. For seniors living alone, this lunch offered particular advantages, since both components kept well in the refrigerator and required no preparation beyond spooning onto a plate. A small container of cottage cheese and a single can of peaches could provide lunches for several days, stretching grocery budgets admirably. Though rarely seen on modern plates, this pairing once represented sensible, economical eating for one. Apple stack cake slices were the mountain answer to store-bought sweets, and they lasted long enough to pack for lunch. Layers of molasses cake were stacked with cooked-down dried apples that had been mashed into a thick jam. You wrapped it tight in wax paper, and by noon the cake had softened and the apple filling had settled deep into every layer. These slices were never fancy, but they were the closest thing to dessert most folks saw during a workday. They carried the taste of fall orchards and wood stoves, even when eaten under the summer sun. If you were lucky enough to get one in your pail, it was probably made by a grandmother who measured sweetness by memory, not spoons. The sugar was scarce, the flour stretched thin, but the effort behind it was rich. It was a small comfort after long hours in the field or at the mill, reminding everyone that even in lean times, there was room for something kind and homemade. Creamed turkey over mashed potatoes brought a taste of holiday leftovers into an ordinary school day. Chunks of tender turkey simmered in a silky white sauce until every piece was coated in rich gravy. Scooped generously over a mound of buttery mashed potatoes, it was the kind of lunch that filled stomachs and soothed spirits in the middle of math class. The aroma of roasting poultry and warm milk gravy floated down the halls, calling every student like a quiet invitation. Even those who claimed they were not hungry somehow found room for seconds when the lunch lady offered. The sauce pooled at the edges of the tray, perfect for sopping up with the soft dinner roll that always came alongside. It felt like a small feast, a comforting reminder of family dinners even on a gray school afternoon. Many still remember that first spoonful melting across potatoes, a warm hug on a chilly day that no modern cafeteria menu can match. If you've ever walked the streets of downtown New York, I'm sure you're familiar with the infamous pastrami on rye. If your grandma's from the Big Apple, chances are her recipe is highly regarded. This sandwich became a staple in Jewish delis in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, thanks to Eastern European immigrants. This one just featured an old-fashioned slice of pastrami on rye bread and a dollop of mustard. Grandma knew that when it came to sandwiches, sometimes less is more, and pastrami on rye is the perfect example of that. But hey, don't forget no pastrami on rye is complete without a pickle on the side. The tartness of a dill pickle or the sweetness of a bread and butter pickle is the perfect contrast to the savory pastrami. A cold baked bean sandwich is what you think it is. It's just cold. 2 slices of modest bread, a familiar presence in the tomato-based sauce, with a generous spread of baked beans. The flavor is something that's a little bit sweet, a little bit tangy, but it's really just the textures that work here so well. The bread is chewy, but the beans mesh together as soon as you bite into them, and as the little bits of sauce squeezed out when you bite into the sandwich, it all makes for one flavorful bite. Cold baked bean sandwiches were a pretty common go-to lunch meal for people in the middle of the 20th century, especially in American households. This was even more true during the 40s, especially among blue-collar workers. Factory towns would often see people buying as much as canned beans as they could during grocery trips. People had a pretty practical approach to their food during these decades, and while the sandwich had no presentation or flair, it definitely got the job done. And it could do that for you today as well, because this is still as reliable of lunch now as it was back then, especially if you're pressed for time. Ketchup sandwiches are also in the same vein of, I don't really have anything else here. It's definitely some bare bones cooking, but when you're down on your luck financially, it's not really the time to be picky. Ketchup sandwiches were usually made with brown bread because whatever white bread you could buy, you could also just get a lot more like potatoes, root vegetables, and onions instead. Those things could be made into soups and stews, so there were very few disadvantaged people actively relying on white bread. Ketchup was also fairly different in the 20th century than it is here. It felt more natural, it had a stronger tomato flavor, and it was a lot cheaper. A bottle of Heinz doesn't cost anything but a few cents. What people would do is sometimes take the meat drippings idea and mix it in with these ketchup sandwiches. They would spread the drippings on the bread or use it as a dip, and if nothing else, it definitely added some more interesting qualities to otherwise usually stale bread. How about you? Have you ever satisfied your hunger with nothing but ketchup and bread when times were rough? Personally, I think that just wouldn't begin to really fill me. You hear the name rumaki and you might start thinking about some pretty exotic dishes, but it's actually more of a humble appetizer that picks a few flavors and does them really, really well. It was also made at Trader Vic's, a Polynesian-style restaurant right here in Uncle Sam's USA, which I'm sure you didn't see coming either. I wouldn't blame you for thinking it's exotic, since at tiki parties it was definitely considered that, and when tiki culture as a whole started erupting into the mainstream of American eating, it was still sought after, with just as much interest. The dish itself also makes use of some things that aren't familiar, and some that are, like chicken livers, water chestnuts, and bacon. It was a really good hors d'oeuvre that boomed in popularity after the World War II era, though you'd be pretty stumped if you tried to go out and look for it today. Still, it's kind of sad we can't go out to parties and experience chestnuts and crispy bacon anymore, wouldn't you agree? Or is tiki cooking not really up your alley? Tomato soup with rice was a Depression-era lunch that combined simplicity with a great deal of comfort. You didn't need much in order to make it. Just a can of tomatoes, or even water and tomato paste, a handful of rice, and any seasoning you like. This was the perfect meal for a cold, rainy day when you needed something warm and filling that could stretch your ingredients and make them last a week. Rice was the main deal here. It could bulk up the soup, turning a thin tomato broth into a hearty meal. With rice, you can always assume that a little goes a long way, and it turned what could have been a sad bowl of red water into a meal that actually felt like food. Plus, rice was very cheap, so adding that to your meals meant you made sure that a small pot of soup could feed the whole family. And while it wasn't really gourmet, you could get your creative freak on and make it special. A few tricks included adding a pinch of sugar to cut the acidity and a pinch of garlic powder to make it zesty. Tomato soup with rice was the kind of meal that will get you through hard times, without making you feel like you were missing out on some great delicacy. It was simple, satisfying, and budget-friendly. Unlike cheese crisps, the chicken and dumpling soup from Arkansas is a healthier and filling meal that was popularized in the 1970s. A soup created from cooking chicken in water and using the remaining broth to boil dumplings emerged as the new comfort food for people across Arkansas. Tater tots were born out of innovation in 1953 by the founders of Ida Golden and Francis Neefy Grigg. Utilizing leftover potato scraps from their French fry production, they created a new snack by chopping these remnants finely, mixing them with flour and seasonings, and forming them into small cylinders before deep frying them to a golden crisp. This process not only provided an efficient solution to food waste, but also produced a snack that was perfectly crispy on the outside while remaining fluffy inside. Tater tots are particularly popular as a side dish, but can also feature in recipes like casseroles, making them a versatile component of school lunches. The method of preparing tater tots involves deep frying, which, while requiring careful temperature control to achieve the perfect crunch without burning, fits well within the capabilities of large kitchen operations in schools. Fish stick sandwiches rose to fame in the 1950s, a golden era for convenience foods, when Gorton's of Gloucester in Massachusetts introduced these breaded delights. They were one of the first frozen foods to be promoted during the television advertising boom of the 1950s, which greatly influenced American eating habits. Quick to prepare and mild in flavor, they became a go-to protein source that fit perfectly between slices of bread with a dollop of tartar sauce or ketchup. To make them, you just need to bake or fry the fish sticks until they're crispy, then sandwich them with your choice of condiments. Their popularity reflects a broader post-war shift towards processed foods that offered ease and quick preparation for growing families and bustling households. These sandwiches were particularly favored in school cafeterias, providing a speedy and efficient way to nourish children with a comforting, crunchy meal. So, tuna noodle casserole really found its footing back when the wallet was a bit tighter for most folks. It's all about mixing up some canned tuna, those squiggly egg noodles, a creamy mushroom soup base, some peas, and whatever crispy stuff you've got, like crushed chips or breadcrumbs. It became a household name during those pinch penny times, serving as a cost-effective way to fill up the family table. Ads would rave about how you could whip this up in a flash. Total lifesaver for the busy families. And over time, everyone started throwing their own twist into the mix, like in the Midwest where they love tossing in cheddar cheese, or others jazzing it up with veggies like celery or bell peppers. Always a hit at family dinners, especially when the weather turns cold and you need something hearty. 2. Tater tots. They arrived in a 15-pound box from Oreida, frozen into perfect cylinders the size of a child's thumb. The cafeteria oven held 6 sheet pans at once, 400 degrees for 20 minutes. No flipping required. A scoop and a half went on each tray, salted from a steel shaker the lunch lady refilled every morning before the bell. Tater tots were the side that made every other side acceptable. You would push the corn around the compartment and eat the tots first, then dip the Salisbury steak in ketchup and eat it second, then drink the milk last. The pattern was as fixed as the bell schedule. Modern cafeteria fryers have been removed from most American elementary schools under the saturated fat rules, but the tots survive in some districts only as baked oven varieties, drier and lighter. The crispness is gone. Creamed corn on toast transformed a humble canned vegetable into a warm, comforting lunch that could be ready in minutes. Seniors living alone during the 1950s and 1960s often kept cans of creamed corn stacked in pantries, knowing they could heat one on the stovetop and pour it directly over buttered toast for a filling midday meal. The cream-style corn needed no additional preparation, its thick texture clinging to the bread while the natural sweetness balanced the butter's richness. Some cooks added a dash of black pepper, but the dish required no elaborate seasoning to satisfy. For those on fixed incomes, creamed corn represented remarkable value at roughly 15 cents per can, enough to top 2 or 3 slices of toast. The combination provided both carbohydrates and vegetables, offering balanced nutrition without complicated cooking. This was practical food for practical people, requiring only a saucepan and 5 minutes of attention. Though largely forgotten today, creamed corn on toast once filled stomachs across America. Pinto bean patties turned humble leftovers into something hearty enough to carry through a day's labor. When supper's beans cooled on the stove, the next morning they would be mashed, mixed with cornmeal or flour, and fried into small cakes. Crisp on the outside, soft inside, they held together just enough to slide between slices of bread for an easy sandwich. Cold or warm, it did not matter. They tasted like thrift and care, proof that nothing in a hillbilly kitchen ever went to waste. You could spice them if you had the means, but even plain, they had a comfort all their own. Some said the flavor deepened overnight, as if the beans remembered the smoke from last night's fire. These patties were food for people who understood how to make plenty out of scraps, and they did it with pride. A jar of pickles on the side turned it into a full meal, simple but whole, just like the folks who made it. Spanish rice bake turned simple pantry staples into something unexpectedly satisfying. Rice was simmered with diced tomatoes, mild chili powder, ground beef, and chopped bell peppers before being baked in massive steel pans until the flavors melded together. When the trays were pulled from the oven, the smell of spiced tomatoes and peppers filled the cafeteria, carrying a hint of excitement down the lunch line. A light sprinkle of grated cheese browned on top added just enough richness to make every bite rewarding. Students liked how the rice stayed fluffy, yet soaked up the seasoned tomato sauce, each forkful offering a gentle warmth rather than strong heat. It was hearty enough to keep bellies full through afternoon classes, yet mild enough to please even the pickiest eaters. Spanish rice bake may not have been flashy, but it was dependable and deeply comforting. A dish that turned a cold day into something memorable with nothing more than rice, tomatoes, and a little school lunch magic. When life hands you a cow but almost nothing else, you cook the cow's brains. Fried cow brains, or calf's brains, if you want to sound a bit more gourmet, was a Dust Bowl specialty not because people wanted to eat it, but because they had to. They were not fastidious in the past. When you had to fight for your life, you ate everything that was on the animal. Now I know that fried cow brains may sound like something that shouldn't even be considered food, let alone something that might be considered delicious. For this dish, brains were washed in water or milk, dredged in flour, and fried until brown and crispy. Consider them as the first-generation chicken nuggets. if chicken nuggets had a soft core and came with a helping of angst. The flavor? It was mild, almost buttery, and that was the reason why nobody fled from the dish when somebody served it. Cow brains fried were dense in nutrients, especially protein, and thus a good meal during famine. While nowadays people might shudder at the thought of consuming brains, in the past, it was simply Tuesday's supper. And hey, if you put some gravy on top, it might just seem like you're eating gourmet food. Scotch eggs are actually a funny one. You would most commonly associate them with pub culture and Britain, right? I mean, that's how most people think of them. That's their history too. People would get off work or get a lunch break and decide to hit the local pub with the lads for a few Scotch eggs. What really are they, though? A Scotch egg is just an egg packed with protein. It's a hard-boiled or soft-boiled egg that gets this blanket of seasoned sausage meat, and nestled inside that, it gets coated in breadcrumbs, upon which it gets deep-fried until it's completely golden brown. So, yeah, it's definitely one calorically dense egg, but that also makes it perfect for work because you can carry 2 or 3 of these and they fill you up right away. The crust is exactly as crispy as you're thinking it is, by the way, and I know you're getting ideas of how succulent this must be to bite into. Let me tell you, you're right on the money. The spiced pork on the inside is something divine, and the creamy egg center just brings everything together for the perfect flavor experience. The flavors also change depending on what spices you use and what herbs you pair it with, so you can really experiment a lot with this dish. So lard sandwiches were very similar to bread and meat drippings in the way they were used. Instead of being a standalone dip, though, or a cooking fat used to toast the bread, these were instead coated with lard. The idea was to use it as a spread and basically just make a sandwich that way. What people would do to spice it up if they could is add scraps of meat if there were any, or some potatoes. They would mash them up, fry them lightly, and use the cutlets as a makeshift patty. It would actually work sometimes, but it was also a lot of work. The good thing about lard sandwiches was that they were ridiculously time efficient. It takes about 2 minutes maximum to make these, and then you have your lunch for work ready. Plus, it helps that people constantly feel rejuvenated thanks to the lard. It worked really well on those hard, labor-intensive days where you had nothing else to eat. It was also a fantastic option for long journeys because it was transportable, easy to carry, and high in energy and fat. However, it did spoil fast and easily, so it wasn't the most ideal solution for really long journeys. A good way to make it a bit better was to add root vegetables, mushrooms, and typical sandwich toppings to it, which I personally love doing. Green tomato pie is something that'll have you running back for seconds. First off, you gotta hand it to whoever made this dish for their ingenuity. It's not every day you get a banger of a dish that actually is centered around making the green tomato shine out of everything else, but Southern home cooking will do that for you. Charlotte's green tomato pie in particular makes use of some typical Southern spices like cinnamon and nutmeg and unripened green tomatoes, and has you making a pie that'll rival even the best apple ones you could find at bakeries. Green tomatoes have an especially great harvest during the fall, so that's when this dish would see the most mileage. You would find houses all over the South constantly making green tomato pies, and this specific pie is an example of how you don't need anything fancy to create something that can get everyone at the table. You know what's even funnier? This dish is one of the best things to come out of mock cooking because it was made to imitate mock apple pie and mincemeat pies. An imitation of an imitation ends up giving us something that was a big part of Southern culture. Who would have thought? Savory bread pudding with leftover veggies was the ultimate Depression-era hack for turning scraps into a hearty meal. Got stale bread? Perfect. Leftover veggies that are past their prime? Even better. This dish was all about not wasting a thing. People couldn't afford to throw food away during the Great Depression, but instead, they got creative. And this meal was one of those everything but the kitchen sink meals that you might have heard your grandma or great-grandma talking about. To make it, you had to tear up the stale bread, mix it with eggs and milk and whatever leftover vegetables you had lying around. It could be basically anything. Carrots, peas, whatever didn't make the cut for last night's dinner. Season it with salt and pepper and maybe some herb seasoning and bake until it is golden and crispy on top but soft and warm inside. The best part about savory bread pudding was that it made something delicious out of things you would usually throw away. And the Great Depression didn't look kindly upon those who didn't know how to save up. Stale bread was transformed from slices into a cozy meal that tasted like it took more effort than it actually did. This dish proved that even in hard times, you could make a meal out of practically nothing. Pizza burgers burst onto the American culinary scene in the 1950s, offering a delightful mashup that appealed to anyone with a love for hamburgers and pizza. This novel creation typically consists of a hamburger patty, either grilled or fried, smothered with marinara sauce, sprinkled with mozzarella cheese, and then broiled until the cheese bubbles with joy, all served on a traditional hamburger bun. Some versions go further, adding toppings like pepperoni or green peppers to more closely mimic a pizza, or substituting the beef patty with spicy Italian sausage for an added kick. By the 1960s, pizza burgers had carved out their niche, especially in school cafeterias and fast food restaurants, offering a tasty twist on well-loved classics and capturing the era's zest for new and exciting food experiences. Now, beef stroganoff is like a warm hug from the past. This dish hails from 19th century Russia, dreamt up by a chef who worked for the Stroganoff family. When it hit American soil, it quickly became a household favorite, particularly beloved in the 50s and 60s for its exotic yet homey vibe. It's all about those tender beef strips swimming in a creamy sour cream sauce, often jazzed up with mushrooms and onions, and served over a bed of noodles or rice. Perfect for anything from a casual family dinner to a more decked-out gathering. Although it's not as prevalent as it once was, likely due to folks leaning towards lighter meals, beef stroganoff still shows its face around the globe, tweaked here and there to suit local tastes. Number 21. The Sloppy Joe Sandwich. The recipe ran in the 1988 USDA quantity cookbook on a single page. 25 pounds of ground beef, 4 cans of tomato sauce, brown sugar, vinegar, mustard, onion, and Worcestershire. The mixture simmered in a tilt skillet for 40 minutes, then went into a hotel pan with a pair of long-handled scoops. A kindergartner got 1 scoop on a hamburger bun. A 6th grader got 2. The bun soaked through by the time your tray reached the table, and the only way to eat it was with a fork. Many older Americans still call it a manwich, like the Hunt's brand on the home shelf. The sodium count on a single Sloppy Joe ran past 900 milligrams, which the 2012 standards capped well below. Hot tomato soup with saltines represented perhaps the most iconic simple lunch for seniors living alone, combining warmth, flavor, and affordability in a single bowl. Campbell's condensed soup cost roughly 12 cents per can and stretched to serve one generously when mixed with water or milk. The soup heated quickly on the stovetop, filling the kitchen with familiar aromas that signaled lunchtime. Saltine crackers floated on top or accompanied the bowl, their salty crunch providing textural contrast to the smooth, tangy soup. For those eating alone, this lunch offered psychological comfort alongside physical nourishment since the warm bowl felt like care and attention. The soup's smooth texture went down easily for those with dental concerns. A sleeve of crackers lasted weeks, making them economical pantry staples. This pairing sustained generations of seniors through quiet lunchtimes, requiring minimal effort. Though soup cans remain on shelves, the ritual of crackers floating in tomato soup has largely faded from daily practice. Bread and milk, peanut butter and honey sandwiches delivered pure, sticky joy that somehow satisfied federal nutrition guidelines while still feeling like a treat. Thick slices of white bread were spread edge to edge with creamy peanut butter, then drizzled with golden honey that soaked slowly into the crumb. When pressed together, the sandwich oozed sweetness with every bite, leaving fingers gleaming and napkins useless. Paired with a small carton of milk and a crisp apple, it offered both protein and energy for the playground ahead. Children loved the chewy contrast of salty peanut butter and smooth honey, a flavor combination that made even dull afternoons feel a little brighter. Lunchroom chatter often paused for the satisfying pull of honey between bites, a small moment of collective delight. Simple, inexpensive, and universally adored, this sandwich remains a memory of childhood that no packaged snack has ever replaced. Forage mushrooms didn't always lining our burgers and topping our pizzas. For a majority of its history, it was really just something people ate when things were super bad. There was nothing to eat and people basically just had to forage for whatever they could. The most popular of this was the button mushroom, but they definitely tried to forage as much as they could. Now, despite this, mushrooms were still considered really low class. People had just begun to associate it with nothing but poverty and hard times. It wasn't until the middle and the later end of the 20th century that mushrooms started to become a classic topping you'd see on not just burgers and pizzas, but steaks, chicken dishes, sandwiches, and all kinds of soups and stews. Basically, it's a mushroom world, and we're just living in it now. A big part of this is how canned mushrooms became so accessible. Another reason is that an interest in European cuisine led to a massive boom in cream of soups and cream of mushroom soups. Share some of your favorite mushrooms with us right now in the comments. Corned beef salad sandwiches are a creamy and savory blend of deli-style corned beef. They typically come mixed with your usual suspects. A little bit of mayonnaise here, some mustard there, and if you really want to be extra, some chopped pickles. These get served between sandwich bread in specific, but if you don't have that, any normal white bread will also do. So these actually have a tangier taste than you would think. And to combat that, a lot of people would also use the honey mustard sauce as a substitute for mayonnaise or even pair it up with the mayonnaise. Some versions would also throw in scrambled eggs or shredded lettuce for a better texture that plays with the corned beef itself. This is something that was extremely popular in America during the middle of the 20th century, especially after World War II ended. People were trying to bounce back from the effects of it all, and canned meats really helped save some bucks. It's something you started seeing not just at work, but at school lunches, picnics, and even potlucks, and this was doubly true for the Midwest and different parts of the South. Bean sandwiches were one of the most important staples for people living not just in the 20th century, but for people all over America for thousands of years. So many of the beans we've become so accustomed to were literally the lifeblood of several communities for a long time. Pinto beans, navy beans, kidney beans, black eye beans, these may be things that we just occasionally use in a salad nowadays, but for a lot of people, having these was the difference between meeting your budget for the month and having to get a loan from somewhere. You could make bean sandwiches with a minimal amount of beans, and they were able to provide some much-needed nutrition and protein in people's diets that they otherwise wouldn't be getting. Some people were not even able to afford the awful cuts of meat or the very cheap ones that butchers would typically discard. They would save whatever meat they had for weekends, celebrations, or for when they really couldn't tolerate eating a makeshift bare-bones meal anymore. Bean sandwiches, thus, were really good at sustaining families, and they were the food of choice for people who had labor-intensive, physically demanding jobs back then, such as factorymen. I know for a fact you've all grown up on some of your grandparents' baked ziti, especially if you have some Italian roots, and if you do, then you share that in common with this dish. Right from the streets of Italy, immigrants first brought this dish over in the middle of the 19th century throughout the early start of the 20th one, so it had a lot of time to become something that people could love and associate with the finer things in life. People had a lot of time by the mid-20th century to try this dish, and plenty of families had passed their own secret baked ziti recipes down. The baked ziti really hit its highest highs during that time period in the 1950s to the 1970s, and it was something you could enjoy at both a potluck and a fancy at-home date. It was a staple of Italian-American cooking, and you could even find it at weddings. I, for one, think that really speaks to how popular the dish was, but what's your experience with this dish? And if you don't have any yet, is it something you'd ever try out? Spaghetti with garlic and olive oil was a Depression-era meal that proved you could make something delicious from only 3 ingredients: spaghetti, garlic, and olive oil. You could whip up a dish that felt fancy without emptying your wallet. This was the kind of meal that made you look like you knew what you were doing in the kitchen, even when you were just throwing stuff together. Boil the spaghetti, then toss it in a pan with sizzling garlic and olive oil, and in a matter of seconds, your home smelled like an Italian restaurant. Sure, you didn't have any meat or sauce, but who needs them when you have garlic to do all the heavy lifting? Olive oil gave the pasta a nice, silky coat, while the garlic brought the savory punch that made you forget how simple the dish actually was. If you had the means, you would sprinkle some Parmesan or red pepper flakes on top, but even without these extras, the pasta hit the spot. This dish was a Depression-era go-to because it was cheap, easy, and quick to make. And sometimes, less is more. It seems eggs were pretty popular in the 70s, as Colorado's Denver omelet is next on our list. An omelet filled with diced ham, onions, bell peppers, and cheese was originally served on bread as a sandwich in Western America. Somewhat inspired by the egg foo young, the Denver omelet eventually developed into a breadless, only egg dish that was thoroughly enjoyed in Colorado as a lunch meal. Sloppy Joes have been a staple in American school cafeterias since their introduction in the mid-20th century. This dish features ground beef or pork that is sautéed with onions and garlic until browned, then simmered in a savory tomato-based sauce seasoned with Worcestershire sauce and other spices. The thick, hearty mixture is then spooned onto soft hamburger buns, creating a filling and flavorful sandwich that is both messy and delightful to eat. The preparation requires minimal kitchen equipment and ingredients that are staples in most school pantries, making it a cost-effective choice for feeding a large number of students. Moreover, the ability to prepare the meat mixture ahead of time and quickly assemble the sandwiches during busy lunch periods enhances its practicality. The familiarity of the flavors, combined with the satisfying nature of the sandwich, ensures that Sloppy Joes remain a cherished option within school meal programs. Turkey and cranberry sandwiches cleverly repurpose the quintessential Thanksgiving leftovers into an enticing sandwich that marries the savory flavor of turkey with the sweet tang of cranberry sauce. This tasty combination rose to popularity in mid-20th century America, showcasing an inventive way to transform holiday leftovers into delightful new meals. The sandwich is simply made by stacking slices of turkey and cranberry sauce, often accompanied by stuffing between two pieces of bread. This culinary creation not only makes excellent use of leftover turkey, but also captures the festive essence of Thanksgiving, melding juicy, savory turkey slices with the sharp sweetness of cranberry sauce in a sandwich that embodies the holiday's spirit. Chicken a la King. Now there's a dish with a bit of a mystery to its name, possibly named after a hotel chef or a guy named James King. It hit the scene big time in the early 20th century across the US. We're talking creamy, luxurious sauce loaded with tender chicken chunks, mushrooms, pimientos, and green peppers, all ready to be spooned over rice, pasta, or bread. It was the perfect solution for turning yesterday's chicken into today's treasure, making it a regular at dinner parties and family gatherings back in the 50s and 60s. As tastes have evolved towards faster, lighter, and more varied dining options, chicken a la King isn't the staple it once was, but it still gets some love around the world, tweaked to fit local flavors and preferences. Number 20. Chicken pot pie. The crust was a sheet of pie dough laid flat across a deep hotel pan, and your filling was a thick stew of diced white meat, peas, carrots, and a roux made from chicken fat and flour. The whole pan baked for 45 minutes until the crust browned in patches. A square spatula cut servings the size of a paperback book. Steam came up off the gravy when your crust broke open. Cafeteria pot pie was one of the few items that crossed every American region with the same recipe, like a weather map drawn in pastry, because the USDA distributed surplus chicken to schools under the same commodity program from 1955 onward. The pies stopped appearing on most lines after 2012 because the crust carried too much saturated fat. Districts replaced them with chicken stew over a whole grain biscuit. Bowl was the simplest possible lunch, yet it sustained seniors across America when appetites were small or budgets impossibly tight. This wasn't a recipe so much as a survival strategy, combining torn pieces of bread with cold or warm milk in a bowl, sometimes sprinkled with sugar. The bread softened in the milk, creating something between cereal and soup that required no cooking and minimal chewing. During the 1940s through the 1960s, many elderly folks turned to this combination when other foods seemed too heavy to prepare. The meal provided calcium from the milk and carbohydrates from the bread, offering basic nutrition when appetites had diminished. Some variations used stale bread specifically, since soaking in milk revived even the driest crusts. The dish cost mere pennies, making it accessible even during the leanest weeks before pension checks arrived. Children who visited grandparents often remembered seeing this humble bowl. Bread and milk bowl remains a powerful symbol of resourceful simplicity. Cold-fried chicken thighs were not made for picnics or company. They were working man's food. The chicken was usually fried in lard the night before, seasoned simply with salt and pepper, then packed into tin pails while it was still warm. By the time lunchtime came, the crust had softened, the fat had settled, and the flavor had deepened into something only patience could make. Miners, loggers, and farmhands ate it straight from the bone, with biscuits or cornbread if they were lucky. It was greasy, hearty, and reliable, one of those meals that filled you up without fuss. Fried chicken was too precious to waste, so the thighs and legs went to work while the white meat stayed home for Sunday. Every bite carried the memory of the skillet's sizzle, the smell of home kitchens that kept the mountains fed even when the world forgot them. Vegetable jelly. O-salad was the cafeteria's attempt to make vegetables exciting, a shimmering lime green mold studded with shredded carrots or bits of cabbage that wobbled on every tray. At first glance, it looked like dessert, catching the light in a jewel-toned sparkle that promised sweetness. One bite revealed the curious mix of tangy gelatin and crisp vegetables, a flavor both strange and oddly refreshing. Teachers encouraged second helpings, claiming it was healthy, while students debated whether it belonged with the main course or beside the pudding. Some children loved the crunch of carrot against the sweet lime, while others quietly pushed it aside, mesmerized by its wobble. The memory of that cool, jiggling slice is unforgettable, a relic of a time when creativity ruled the cafeteria and no combination seemed too bold to try. Vegetable Jell-O salad remains one of the most distinctive and talked about curiosities of 1960s school lunches. Dandelion salad might sound like a fairy tale-like name for an incredibly frugal but delicious meal. By now, you might have noticed the scavenger vibe in terms of ingredients of the dishes so far. People making anything out of whatever they had on hand. Economic downturns often feature lifestyle changes, and the Great Depression was no other, sending people on a scramble to find and eat anything. Dandelion salad took scramble seriously as the meal involved finding and foraging dandelions. You would cut out all the roots, flowers, and waste to make the dressing for a very healthy salad. For people, especially those on a diet and a budget, this was a godsend. For a garnish, all people would usually put on it was lemon juice and olive oil. A dash of salt and you were good to go at basically no cost. Let's talk pork pies for a hot second. Basically, these were the original British meat snacks, and a lot of immigrants that first came on over to America popularized this dish as a working-class old reliable that you could whip up whenever you wanted. A classic pork pie is this round pastry jam-packed with ground pork, tucked into a firm and crumbly hot water crust. The top is usually sealed, and you have a layer of pork jelly poured in after baking, which sets as soon as the meat begins to cool. I know that might sound like a bit much, but it really does work. Also, the peppery seasonings aren't something you can miss here. They really make the dish stand out, and the cold, dense pork center contrasts amazingly well with the buttery crust. It's something that people preferred eating cold because that's when everything would truly set in, and the jelly would be at its best, but you could have it hot too. Pork pies are genuinely a vintage recipe though, going back all the way to medieval England. They took off in the 16th century. They were a massive hit with fox hunters, and the only ones that could hunt those were upper-class dudes in red coats. Eventually, it became a no-nonsense meal that everybody knew about. Or milk toast was a common meal for many working-class and poor Americans. This was doubly true if you were living in the 19th and 20th centuries. I mean, like bean sandwiches, this is something that I feel was always just popular, but it was never really massively used like it was in these 2 centuries. It was very easy to digest, it was something that filled you up, and it was a great way to repurpose any stale bread you had. The appeal of milk toast was pretty good in that regard. You got a filling, sweet dessert out of it, and you also got to take care of any bread that was about to go bad. For low-income families, milk toast was a good way to stretch very limited resources. Stale bread works just fine with warm milk, And in rural areas where families had their own cattle and cows or access to fresh dairy at wholesale prices, it was even more of a thing. Now here's something that started out in the bleakest of times but quickly became a sensation throughout America even after the Great Depression ended. You can't ever beat a fried bologna sandwich. I don't care what uptown neighborhood and what fancy restaurant you've been to. Something about that mix of bologna with cheese, mayo, and sometimes even bacon and sausages is unbeatable. It was something that was incredibly beloved by the public right after the Second World War ended, and the Midwest in particular couldn't really ever get enough of it. Diners, homes, rural areas, local breakfast joints, everyone was serving an affordable fried bologna sandwich. It was something you could rely on to both satisfy your taste buds, get you a healthy dose of protein, and not break your wallet if you had it daily, which was really asking for a lot in those times. Deviled eggs with pickles were a treat that turned humble ingredients into something delicious back in the day. Eggs were a cheap, reliable protein source, and if you had a jar of pickles, you were already halfway to creating something fancy, by 1930s standards anyway. Making deviled eggs is nothing revolutionary. Just hard-boil them, scoop out the yolk, and mix with a little mayo, mustard, and the thing that ties it all together: pickles. The pickles added a crunch that took the eggs from plain food to a party snack. However, the only party trick was surviving yet another day on a shoestring budget. People loved deviled eggs because they felt like a special treat, even when times were tough. The pickles added that little something extra, like a surprise flavor bomb in the middle of your egg. Plus, it was a great way to stretch a meal. Eggs were filling and they were perfect for families who had to make do with limited supplies. Whether served at lunch or as a snack, deviled eggs with pickles were a fun, zesty way to make an ordinary ingredient feel a little more special. Onto the Cuban sandwich, which first appeared in Florida and rose in ranks as a favorite lunch food. You could say the sandwich literally came from Cuba, as in the 1900s, Ybor City in Florida witnessed a huge influx of Cuban immigrants. They brought along Cuban sandwiches with them and started selling them in the state. Taste-wise, the sandwich was outwardly, so it is really no surprise people welcomed this lunch onto their lunch tables. Fish sticks became part of the school lunch menu shortly after their commercial introduction in the 1950s. Made from white fish like cod or pollock, these sticks are cut into manageable pieces, breaded and then deep-fried or baked to create a crispy exterior with a tender and flaky interior. This preparation method not only makes fish sticks easy to eat, but also appealing to the palates of young students who may otherwise be reluctant to consume fish. The breading, often seasoned with spices and herbs, adds a savory flavor that complements the mild taste of the fish, making it a popular choice in school cafeterias. Fish sticks are typically served with tartar sauce or ketchup and a side of vegetables, providing a balanced meal with proteins, carbs, and vitamins. Their ease of preparation, including the ability to cook them from frozen, aligns well with the needs of large-scale meal production typical in schools. Speaking of those times, another really good source of protein was catfish, and one of the best ways to have it was fried catfish with hush puppies. This is again something that'll take us right to the heart of Southern cooking if we eat it. Along those rural places near rivers, lakes, ponds, and other bodies of water where you could find fresh catfish in abundance. Hush puppies were something made with fried cornmeal batter and were a popular dish to give to soldiers during the Civil War, so all in all, this dish was really light money-wise. Some basic Cajun spices or a Southern spice blend would make it even better into a real full-fledged meal that you could eat in comfort with the family. While it's been a big part of Southern cooking ever since the 19th century, it arguably had its biggest glory days in the 20th one as part of Southern soul food. There was a time in the 30s to 40s where soul food started to get into more and more menus across several places in the South, which wasn't always the case. Thank God it did, though, because steamed catfish definitely doesn't hit the spot quite like fried ones do with some golden brown hush puppies. The fried bologna and cheese sandwich is a classic testament to the straightforward, comforting nature of traditional American cuisine. In the southern United States, this sandwich is sometimes affectionately called a redneck steak, highlighting its role as a staple among working-class families. This unpretentious sandwich comprises slices of bologna, fried until the edges curl, paired with melting cheese and enclosed between two slices of bread, then grilled or toasted. Its roots can be traced back to the early 20th century when bologna was a popular and economical meat choice, quickly becoming a favored lunch option in the Midwest and southern U.S. Typically found in diners and local eateries, this sandwich won over many with its uncomplicated yet satisfying blend of crispy, savory bologna and creamy, melted cheese, encapsulated in warm, toasty bread, a simple yet fulfilling dish loved for its comforting flavors. Liver and onions. That's a dish that harks back to when folks appreciated the hearty, nutrient-packed offerings from the kitchen. This classic is made from beef liver, often soaked in milk to soften its robust flavor, then fried up with onions until the liver's crispy on the edges but tender inside. Known for its high iron content, liver and onions was especially popular among older generations for its health benefits. The caramelized onions add a sweet contrast that's just right. It really caught on in parts of the U.S. with big meatpacking industries, like the Midwest and Northeast, where fresh offal was easy to come by. But as tastes evolved, the dish started seeing less love, probably because today's diners often opt for lighter, less intense flavors. It's definitely not the menu staple it once was. Number 19. Rectangle cheese pizza. A frozen sheet of par-baked dough, 14 inches by 20, came stacked 12 to a case from a regional supplier. The kitchen ladled tomato sauce from a tilt skillet, spread it with the back of a serving spoon, then covered the whole sheet with 1.5 pounds of low-moisture mozzarella from a 5-pound bag. 8 minutes at 500 degrees, then the cook pulled the pan and cut it into 24 perfect rectangles with a long-handled wheel cutter. Each rectangle weighed about 4 ounces. In 1987, the line cost added up to 65 cents per serving, like a coin you could trade across the lunchroom. That was the cheapest hot entree the federal program allowed. The crust was thicker than a takeout pizza, almost focaccia, with a thin glaze of oil on the bottom from the parchment. The cheese cooled into a single rubbery layer that you could lift in one piece and eat folded over. Friday was rectangle pizza day in most American districts. Kids who hated the spinach side and pushed the orange wedge to one corner would still finish your rectangle pizza in 3 bites and ask whether seconds were left in the warming line. Lunch ladies learned to count the rectangles by the 3rd class through because the 8th grade boys came through last and would eat anything still warm. The recipe came from a 1988 USDA standardized cookbook distributed to school food service directors across all 50 states. Sister Mary Catherine, in a Cleveland parochial school, used the same recipe word for word, only doubled. The 2012 nutrition standards changed all of it. The dough now must be whole grain rich, the cheese must be reduced fat, the sodium per serving must come in under 480 milligrams. The original rectangle pizza carries closer to 700 milligrams in a single piece. What most people forget is that the cheese formula itself changed too, not just the crust. A modern version exists, made with cauliflower flour and reduced sodium cheese. But the texture and the smell are not the same. A child from 1986 would not recognize the slice on your tray. Canned salmon patties transformed affordable pantry protein into crispy, satisfying lunch fare that seniors could prepare in small batches. A single can of pink salmon, costing roughly 30 cents, provided enough fish for several patties when mixed with crushed crackers, egg, and minced onion. The mixture was shaped into rounds and fried in oil until golden brown on both sides. For seniors living alone, salmon patties offered the advantage of being made fresh in whatever quantity was needed, since the canned fish kept indefinitely. 2 patties served between bread or alongside vegetables made a complete lunch, providing protein and satisfaction. The recipe required no precise measurements and forgave substitutions, making it accessible for those who rarely cooked elaborate meals. Many seniors learned to make these patties during the Depression and carried the habit into retirement. The soft bones in canned salmon provided valuable calcium. Though canned salmon still fills shelves, the art of patty making has largely disappeared. Sorghum syrup sandwiches were sugar for the poor and fuel for the strong. A thick smear of dark syrup between 2 biscuits or slices of white bread turned into instant energy for men working fields or hauling timber. Sorghum grew easy in southern soil, and the syrup mills were the heart of many small towns come harvest season. The sandwich itself was sticky and simple, sweetness caught between starch, just messy enough to make it real. It was the kind of food children would sneak before chores, and grown folks would pack for long days when they needed something to push them through. Sorghum was more than a sweetener. It was survival in a jar, and it stayed good for months. The taste was rich, earthy, and honest, a little bitter around the edges, just like life itself. Macaroni and tomato casserole was a true budget hero, filling plates and hearts with nothing more than pasta, stewed tomatoes, and a dusting of cheese. Elbow macaroni boiled in giant pots before being folded into a thick tomato sauce seasoned with onions and a touch of pepper. A light sprinkle of grated cheddar melted into a gentle crust during baking, sealing in the comforting aroma. When the lunch bell rang, the scent of tomatoes and cheese floated through hallways, drawing students with its home-style promise. Each bite brought the tender chew of macaroni and the sweet tang of slow-cooked tomatoes, a combination that felt both hearty and familiar. Children returned for seconds, not because it was fancy, but because it was filling and warm on cold days. Macaroni and tomato casserole turned simple ingredients into a meal that carried students through the longest afternoons and remains a beloved memory of uncomplicated cafeteria fare. Potato pancakes are one that we are very sad to have seen fade away from the arsenal of home chefs. Pancakes made with matzo or applesauce topped with garlic or fried onions made for such a mouth-watering meal. Low-income households back in those times were struggling to buy produce. Farmers' markets were uniformly unaffordable for middle-income households due to creeping inflation. People needed a vegetable that was cost-appropriate and easy to make in batches. Enter the potato pancake, which revolutionized the breakfast scene in a struggling time. As times improved, people slowly started going to more fancier and creative breakfasts, unfortunately leaving simpler dishes behind. Potato pancakes took a backseat in the face of changing food and economic trends, but anyone from the era will rave to you about the godsend these were. Beef dripping toast is pretty much entirely nostalgic comfort food. Let me run you by a typical dripping-based toast. You take some thick slices of crusty bread, which ideally should be warm or toasted but will work with whatever the day gives us. You slather on some beef drippings and some salt, pepper, malt vinegar, and whatever else you really like on your toast, and you're good to go. Beef drippings are just the rendered fat from roasts, and most of the time they still have the little browned jelly bits mixed in with the toast. As far as flavors go, you want to imagine a deep umami with a real buttery richness. Something that hits like a cozy blanket on a cold day. It's almost as if toast and your regular 20th century Sunday roast had an incredibly greasy baby meant for breakfasts. Beef dripping toast wasn't just popular in America with the working class. It was the same deal in Britain, and it was served for, honestly, any meal of the day. Dirty cheap, really filling, and something that takes about 15 minutes to prepare? Yeah, nobody was going to be letting go of this recipe anytime soon. Onion sandwiches are not really hard to understand. They're simple, inexpensive meals that were common among many poor Americans. Plus, there's no secret here. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's just raw onion sliced into thin shapes placed between two slices of bread. At most, people would add in whatever butter, salt, or pepper they could spare, and it was something that was favored by people who really wanted an easy-to-prepare meal. Onions also had the benefit of being some of the cheapest vegetables available in the entire market. They also were great for storage, which means that they were able to be bought in bulk without you worrying about them going bad. Bread was also something that people always had in stock, and many families would be relying on meals like this to get by. If they could not afford to buy their own bread, a lot of people would make their own bread or purchase day-old loaves at a discounted price. Onions weren't ever something expensive, but people could also grow them, and many who lived on the outskirts of urban cities and communities did this. They were also a common crop even within these communities because people had their own home gardens. Despite the simplicity, though, the onion sandwich was a knockout. It could really fill you up. The meals we've had so far are really cheap, make-do food, but they still are a proper meal. We're going to go forward in time a bit, all the way to the beginning of what most people consider the late 20th century, where stuffed zucchini boats first started becoming something you would hear about regularly. At bars, from your friends and colleagues, or your partners. They became really hot in the 60s and 70s when it felt like everyday people were trying another dish from a new country that hadn't really touched base in America yet. It was the first time people expanded their taste buds beyond the bacon, pancake, and hash brown breakfasts they were mostly used to. Plus, stuffed zucchini boats were really healthy. They were a lot better to eat than those aforementioned breakfasts. The best part was that you could really change up the fillings, so depending on what you wanted, you could have fully vegetarian zucchini boats or ones with ground beef stuffings. People say this is a part of Italian-American cooking, but a lot of Mediterranean cooking makes use of dishes similar to zucchini boats, like using stuffed peppers and vegetables like eggplants. Carrot and potato hash was a Depression-era staple that made the most out of two cheap and hearty veggies. Potatoes were filling while carrots added just enough sweetness to keep things interesting. This meal was perfect for stretching a limited budget because both ingredients were as cheap as they come, lasted forever, and could be found in almost every kitchen. The preparation was simple. Chop up the vegetables, toss them in a hot pan, and fry until golden and crispy. It was simple, but the combination of soft potatoes and slightly caramelized carrots created a comforting, flavorful dish. If you had an onion lying around, it could join the party, adding even more depth to this humble hash. The beauty of carrot and potato hash is in its versatility. You could eat it on its own or throw an egg on top for some protein. Either way, it was filling, warm, and super satisfying. Everything you needed to keep going during tough times. It wasn't the most exciting dish, but it got the job done. And isn't that what really counts? Continuing the sandwich trend onto Delaware, the locals created a unique recipe called crab cake sandwiches. People instantly adopted the sandwich as a favorable lunch to eat in work breaks. Delaware crabs recipes often get overlooked because Maryland and Chesapeake Bay are more famous in terms of seafood. Macaroni and cheese loaf emerged as a popular variation in the 1970s when schools sought to diversify their menu offerings while still providing comforting and familiar foods. This dish takes the beloved elements of traditional macaroni and cheese, a mixture of cooked macaroni and creamy cheese sauce, and adds eggs and breadcrumbs to bind the ingredients into a solid loaf that can be easily sliced. The loaf is baked until the exterior is slightly crispy and golden, offering a textural contrast to the soft, cheesy interior. This format not only makes serving more efficient, but also reduces food waste, as the loaf can be cut into precise portions. Curried sardine salad sandwiches blend the robust, pungent flavors of sardines with the exotic, spicy warmth of curry powder, producing a sandwich that's anything but ordinary. These culinary delights originated in mid-20th century America, when canned sardines were an economical choice in the pantry, especially in the aftermath of World War II. This particular recipe mixes mashed sardines with curry powder, creamy mayonnaise, a splash of lemon juice, and crisp chopped celery, creating a spread that's rich in both flavor and texture. Spread generously on bread, this salad can be adorned with fresh lettuce or cucumber slices, adding a crunch that contrasts beautifully with the creamy filling. In England, it's common to find variations including chopped apples or raisins, adding a sweet note, while American adaptations might toss in hard-boiled eggs or capers, enhancing the flavor profile further. Picture this: New York, 1896, the swanky Waldorf Astoria Hotel, and there you have the birth of the Waldorf salad. This crunchy mix of apples, celery, and walnuts all tied together with a creamy mayonnaise dressing became a hit for its refreshing simplicity and elegance. It was Oscar Cherky, the maître d'hôtel, who is credited with creating this iconic dish, which has no lettuce despite being a salad. It's the kind of dish that added a touch of class to any gathering, easy to whip up but sophisticated enough to impress. Over the years, folks have played around with the ingredients, throwing in grapes, swapping mayo for yogurt, or adding a sprinkle of chicken to bulk it up. But as culinary scenes expanded, the Waldorf salad started appearing less frequently, edged out by a parade of new salads flaunting global flavors and lighter dressings. Still, its knack for blending textures continues to influence salad trends far and wide. Number 18. The corn dog on a stick. They came frozen, 80 to a case, the cornmeal batter already wrapped tight around a beef and pork frankfurter on a wooden skewer. The cafeteria oven baked them on parchment for 18 minutes. Then a kitchen worker tonged them onto trays 2 at a time. Mustard came in foil packets you tore open with your teeth. The wooden stick was the part most kids fought over after the dog was gone, because you could prop it in a milk carton and pretend it was a flag. Corn Dog Day was usually a Wednesday on the 4-week rotation, paired with baked beans and a peach half. The cafeteria version was always oven-baked, like a leaner cousin to keep the saturated fat under the federal cap. By 2014, the breading tested above the new sodium limits. Most districts pulled it from your menu and never put it back. Vienna sausages and crackers served as the self-contained lunch that required no cooking, no refrigeration, and no cleanup beyond disposing of the can. Those small, soft sausages packed in briny liquid provided ready-to-eat protein that seniors living alone could access whenever hunger struck. A can cost roughly 15 cents and contained enough sausages to pair with crackers for a complete, if modest, midday meal. The sausages had a mild flavor and tender texture that some found comforting while others tolerated as practical sustenance. Eaten straight from the can with crackers, this lunch could be assembled in under 10 minutes without dirtying pots or pans. For elderly folks on fixed incomes, Vienna sausages represented protein that lasted indefinitely and required nothing beyond opening the can. Some included mustard for dipping, but many ate them plain. The lunch carried associations with simple times when elaborate preparation seemed unnecessary. Vienna sausages have largely disappeared from consideration as proper lunch fare. Fried green tomato sandwiches were tart, crisp, and practical, born out of the need to use what the frost might ruin. Unripe tomatoes were sliced, dredged in cornmeal, and fried in bacon grease until golden. Layered between bread, they made a meal that traveled well and tasted like summer's last stand. Field hands loved them for the crunch, while homemakers loved that nothing from the garden went to waste. They were bright and sharp, the kind of food that woke your tongue after hours in the heat. Some folks added onions or a slice of cheese, but most ate them plain, still warm and oily in paper wrapping. It was a clever dish, built from what could not wait for tomorrow, carrying that same stubborn spirit that kept rural families going year after year. Hot dog and bean casserole proved that a few humble ingredients could feed an entire school with room to spare. Thick baked beans simmered in a sweet brown sauce while sliced hot dogs nestled on top, their edges curling as they browned. The aroma of smoky beans and sizzling franks filled every corner of the cafeteria, making even the quietest students perk up. Served with a slice of buttered bread, it was hearty enough to power through gym class and math lessons alike. Children loved the playful surprise of finding extra pieces of hot dog hidden beneath the beans, a small reward for digging deep. The combination of sweet sauce and salty meat created a flavor that still lingers in memory, a reminder of simple pleasures on a school day. It was thrifty, filling, and impossible to forget, the kind of meal that kept students happy and cafeteria workers proud of stretching every dollar to its fullest. If you believe that using every part of the animal is a modern concept, you are mistaken. Dust Bowl families were not sparing any part of the pig, including the snout. Pig snouts breaded might sound like something you dare a friend to eat, but during the Great Depression, it was a delicacy. When meat was a rare commodity, the snout was a cheap source of something meaty, chewy, and quite palatable. The snouts were washed, cooked until soft, and then breaded before being deep-fried to golden brown. The result? A crispy outside and a very tasty meat on the inside. Well, yes, the texture may have been somewhat unusual, but when you are hungry, you don't mind. Real quick, if you're loving this content as much as we loved making it, hit subscribe to stay connected and help us reach even more amazing folks like you. To Dust Bowl families, pig snouts breaded were not just edibles, but a way to pay tribute to every pound of what little they had. No part was wasted, while such meals ensured that scarcity became resourcefulness. Nowadays, breaded pig snouts can be found only in some culinary forums, but they are a vivid example of how people tried to feed themselves when there were no chips, but snouts. Would I try it? To put it in perspective, if my grandma was to prepare it with a wink and a smile, I'd be willing to take a bite. Indeed, when you survive, you become brave and perhaps a little curious. But would you try it? Leave us the answer in the comments below. Pickled egg and bread is one of those old-school snacks that kind of raises an eyebrow when you first hear about it, but once you try it, you actually end up firmly seated on the bandwagon. It's exactly what the description on the tin says too. It's a pickled egg, usually drowning in vinegar and different kinds of tangy complementary spices, with a slice of plain buttered bread or a soft roll. No fancy layering, no Worcestershire sauce or anything, just the classic sharp punch of a pickle, balanced by the familiar, comforting tastes of egg and bread. Flavor-wise, this is a full-on vibe. The egg has a really nice texture that goes wonderfully with the pickles, and the acidic kick from the pickled brine really helps to contrast with the richness of the yolk of the egg. You take that, mix in some warm buttered bread, and you get yourself a meal that's the whole package. Creamy, soft, chewy, sharp, tangy, and whatever other flavor profile you can guess in your head. Pickled eggs are actually something that you'd find in New England more than anywhere else in America, but they've always been something of a working-class classic. Spam and crackers are a classic that you are all very aware of, but what you might not know is that after the Depression and war ended, these were the lifelines of people across the entire country. I know we've all heard so many stories of how Spam was nearly invaluable during the Depression, but it's also been something that's worth all of its weight in gold in later eras too. For a lot of people, Spam and crackers were the most ideal and reliable breakfast, something that became steeped and ingrained in their daily routine to the point that they just did not know what to do without it. Do you have anything like that? Maybe a bowl of oatmeal you need to get your day started. A favorite cereal that you just can't get out of bed without. Maybe you really need your usual peanut butter and jam sandwich. Whatever makes you tick, everyone was sustained by Spam and crackers. You could make casseroles out of sandwiches, use it in stews, and even make gravies out of it. You could dip crackers into a makeshift dip at home and also enjoy them that way. Spread some lard on them with the Spam, or make a very nice sandwich with the crackers, Spam and celery or iceberg. It would be low effort and really quick, so it was the perfect thing to make for when you were in a rush. Hoppin' John is a dish that has some pretty rich heritage. I'm talking about African, Caribbean, and Native American roots that all boil together in the melting pot known as the South, where it first started becoming really trendy. However, the origins of the dish are actually a bit darker than just a happy coincidence that somehow got into everyone's table. Though the people who were eating it happily wouldn't know, it was first created and brought over by enslaved Africans in the American South. It made use of African rice and pork, and yes, the best part of the dish were the black-eyed peas even in those times. Now, as far as the name Hoppin' John is considered, nobody really ever knew where it first came from, or if there was a John who made this dish and brought it into everyone's lives, but the first time this name was mentioned was in the 1840s in a print. If you were down in the South and African American communities during New Year, then you would especially see a lot of Hoppin' Johns everywhere. The aroma of those peas and the smoked pork wouldn't miss anyone's nose, as the scent carried for miles and miles away. It was eaten specifically on New Year's because it was a common belief that eating Hoppin' Johns would bring good luck to people if they ate it to start the year. If you went into any new year with such a good plate of food, I'd say your luck was already pretty good. So maybe it does work? Number 17. Spaghetti with meat sauce. The pasta came in 20-pound bags of dry strands, boiled in a 30-gallon kettle until a piece thrown at the wall stuck for 1 second and slid off. Kids who walked past the kitchen at 10 in the morning could smell the simmering tomato and oregano halfway down your hallway. The sauce was ground beef, canned tomato puree, garlic powder, oregano, and a pinch of sugar. A wire scoop fished portions of pasta out of the kettle, like a net pulling shells from surf, and a 6-ounce ladle dropped sauce on top. The serving line moved fast on spaghetti day. Kids with braces dreaded it, and ate the garlic bread first. Sister Joan, in a Pittsburgh Catholic school, served the same plate every Tuesday for 19 years, with a sprinkle of dried parsley, because she said it made the sauce look fresher. The 2012 standards limited white pasta to 1 serving a week per child, and the recipe disappeared from most menus. Potted meat and crackers provided quick, shelf-stable lunch protein for seniors who needed no-fuss meals ready in moments. Those small cans of spreadable meat paste, often pork or chicken-based, cost mere pennies and required no refrigeration until opened. The meat spread easily on saltines, rye crisps, or Melba toast, creating bite-sized portions that could be eaten while reading or listening to the radio. For seniors living alone, this lunch represented pure convenience since crackers stayed fresh in sleeves and meat cans stacked neatly in pantries. The flavor was salty and intensely meaty, a little going far when spread thinly across crackers. Some added pickle slices or mustard to brighten the richness, though many ate the combination plain. The protein helped maintain energy through afternoon hours when larger meals felt burdensome. This wasn't glamorous eating, but it was practical sustenance, acknowledging the reality of cooking for one. Though still sold in stores, potted meat has disappeared from respectable lunch fare. Potato cakes from leftover mash were the quiet heroes of mountain kitchens. You mixed yesterday's mashed potatoes with flour, salt, and maybe an egg if you had one, then fried them in lard until the edges turned crisp. They were soft inside and golden outside, wrapped in cloth to stay warm for the noontime break. Whether eaten with onions or just plain, they were the kind of food that filled the stomach and felt familiar. They started as supper leftovers but became a comfort in their own right, passed from hand to hand in lunch tins and brown paper. Nothing fancy, just good sense and good flavor. Every family had their way of making them, but they all shared the same goal, stretching a meal into tomorrow. Creamed peas on toast turned a simple vegetable into a meal that felt both nourishing and gentle, perfect for a meatless Monday. Bright green peas were simmered in a creamy white sauce until they softened and released their natural sweetness. The mixture was spooned generously over thick slices of toasted bread that soaked up the sauce while staying pleasantly chewy. The contrast of soft peas and crisp toast made each bite satisfying, while the mild flavors comforted even the pickiest eaters. Teachers praised its balance of vegetables and grains, and students discovered that a sprinkle of black pepper elevated it further. The smell of warm cream and sweet peas filled the cafeteria, creating a sense of calm before the chaos of afternoon lessons. It was humble, yes, but it carried the quiet charm of a meal prepared with care. Creamed peas on toast remains a gentle memory of 1960s school lunches, a taste of simple goodness that modern menus rarely match. Who says you need apples to make an apple pie? Not the Depression era, folks, that's for sure. This mock apple pie was a genius hack that used Ritz crackers as the crust and a sweet, sticky filling made from sugar, cinnamon, and water. It was a budget-friendly dessert that satisfied the sweet tooth without the need for expensive or hard-to-find ingredients. Plus, it was a great way to use up those stale crackers lurking in the back of your pantry. The Ritz mock apple pie became a Depression-era favorite, despite the fact that it was a pastry imposter. How did it work? The aromatic mixture of sugar, cinnamon, butter, lemon juice, and crackers combined to convince the taster's senses that the pie actually tasted of apples. Mock apple pie actually dates to the mid-1800s. During the wintertime, when apples were scarce and dried apple stores were used up, inventive home cooks would instead use soda crackers or stale bread. The more modern Ritz cracker version came about in the 1930s. The miner's pasty is something with an incredibly serious backstory. It's this handheld meat and potato pie that gets wrapped in a crumpled pastry. Usually the pastries were pretty thick too, and a host of ingredients on the inside. I'm talking diced beef, potatoes, Swede rutabaga, caramelized or just sliced onions, and a generous sprinkle of salt and pepper. This meal was designed to survive a few rounds in hell because it was made so that it would last you the entire day. The target audience for the meal was laborers and people who worked physically intensive jobs, But they wanted to make the kind of thing that these sorts of workers could still carry around in their bags or pockets. The flavor is also something that really helps restore your spunk for the next shift. It's earthy, homey, and rich, the kind of thing that really feels like a home-cooked meal as soon as you bite into it. Miners' pasties were the go-to lunch for a lot of different kinds of miners everywhere, not to be confused with the Cornish tin pasties we just talked about. Miners would typically rely exclusively on these because these things were built for the rough life. No plates, spoons, or forks are needed, only your hands and how fast you can finish these and clock back in at work. Hardtack and water is not really something you can say this about. Hardtack and water was literally something people only ate in the worst of times when they had absolutely nothing else to work with. A simple cracker-like biscuit made of flour and water was one of the most common foods in America for around 2 entire centuries. It saw so many different eras, events, and wars. People associated it with famine, regular inflation spikes, Civil War rationing, the Depression, and so much more. Seafaring traders would keep a steady stock of hardtack, and it was actually even more important for them. This is because next to cockroaches, diamonds, and titanium, hardtack might be the most indestructible thing on the planet. When the thing is stored properly, it literally can stay good for years without spoiling, and this is something that you'd usually expect of food that's been put through preservatives. Plus, the economical benefit was unmatched. With just some flour, water, and salt, hardtack was one of the easiest things to make at home. Also, one of the most boring things. Are you a big fan of deli food? Deli meats, sandwiches, loaves, that kind of thing? Then one of the best parts of that kind of eating was the olive loaf. It was usually made with pork and beef plus chopped green olives, which is what it became known for. There was a small, brief period before convenience foods started taking over America, where processed meats were really becoming a thing, and this dish was a big part of that time, which arguably spanned all over the 1940s to the 1970s. It had an extremely loyal fan base too, as this was responsible for many deli counters still staying in business. These days, you could find retro stalls that still do a mean olive load, but the days where this was a commonplace item on the street and something you'd see your grandma cooking up are long gone in America's history. People definitely remember the flavors of the bologna, the ham loaves, and all the amazing dips they came with, though. Moving on to something sweet for a second, rice pudding with raisins. It was a Depression-era answer to a comforting dessert made from almost nothing. Leftover rice, milk or water, some sugar, and a handful of raisins were all it took to make your kids happy with a sweet treat. The magic happened when the rice simmered down into a creamy, pudding-like consistency, turning something so plain into a dessert that felt a little indulgent. Raisins were the main show here. They added the perfect amount of taste and texture, making it taste fancy rather than ordinary. Just the thought of raisins makes me want to retch. I truly admire the strength our ancestors had when they were able to eat food like this. Don't get me wrong, I love rice pudding. But raisins? No way, not a chance. The best part about rice pudding is how flexible the recipe could be. If you were like me and didn't like raisins, you could just sprinkle some cinnamon on top, or maybe even a splash of vanilla if you were feeling fancy. For families looking to make a warm, sweet, and filling dessert, rice pudding with raisins was the perfect way to go. It satisfied almost every sweet tooth without costing much, making it a household favorite. Plus, it was really simple to make, so even the kids could help and stir the pot. Some of those kids are now our grandparents teaching us those same recipes. How beautiful is that? Talking about budget lunches, the Cobb salad from California was a popular dish amongst people in search of a healthy salad. Cobb salad originated from the Brown Derby restaurant in Los Angeles after the chef realized he had not eaten in a while. Throwing together random ingredients, he created a salad that everyone would eat after a long day. Creamed corn is prepared by cooking sweet corn kernels until tender and then mixing them with a creamy sauce made from milk, butter, and a thickener such as flour or cornstarch. Seasoned lightly, usually with salt and pepper, and sometimes enhanced with sugar to bring out the natural sweetness of the corn, creamed corn is a favorite in school cafeterias for its smooth, slightly sweet flavor profile that appeals to young eaters. This dish serves as an excellent way to incorporate vegetables into students' diets in a form that is generally more palatable to children who may be picky eaters. Its popularity in schools is reinforced by its nutritional content, offering a good source of fiber and vitamins while being gentle on young stomachs. Creamed corn's ability to be kept warm in serving trays without losing texture or flavor makes it particularly suited to the cafeteria setting, where dishes need to remain appealing throughout the serving period. Olive loaf sandwiches merge the meaty taste of bologna with the tangy zing of green olives, creating a distinctive and palatable sandwich choice. Originating from the mid-20th century American lunch scene, olive loaf, a cold cut laden with green olives, ground pork, and beef, became a popular choice for its flavor and convenience. The sandwich itself typically includes slices of this unique loaf paired with creamy mayonnaise or tangy mustard, crisp lettuce, and occasionally a slice of cheese, all sandwiched between two slices of fresh bread. Simple to assemble and delicious to eat, this sandwich became a favorite for picnics and packed lunches, often accompanied by potato chips or pickles. Olive loaf sandwiches showcase how processed meats and cold cuts played a pivotal role in American lunch culture, offering quick, flavorful, and varied meal options for families on the go. Green bean casserole, a dish that smells like nostalgia and tastes like comfort. Invented in 1955 by Dorcas Riley at the Campbell Soup Company, this casserole was a genius way to use up pantry staples: canned green beans, cream of mushroom soup, and crispy fried onions. It quickly became a Thanksgiving must-have, celebrated for its creamy goodness and that irresistible onion crunch. Despite its fame, the casserole has seen a bit of a downturn in everyday use, outpaced by fresher, trendier side dishes. Yet, chefs and home cooks have been giving it a modern makeover, using fresh green beans or homemade mushroom sauce to elevate the classic. Some regional versions even throw in bacon or cheese, adding a bit of local flair to this beloved dish. Number 16. Chicken nuggets with dipping sauce. They came in 5-pound bags of frozen breaded white meat, 28 nuggets per pound, baked on parchment-lined sheet pans for 12 minutes at 450 degrees. Your dipping sauce was barbecue or honey mustard from a half-gallon jug, portioned into 1-ounce paper soufflé cups. 5 nuggets per tray for elementary, 7 for middle school. Chicken Nugget Day was the most predictable attendance day on the cafeteria calendar because almost no kid stayed home or brought a sack lunch that morning. The dinosaur-shaped version most adults remember today did not appear in school cafeterias until 1993. Through the 1980s, the nuggets were always the same uniform oval, slightly puffed at the seam, like a leaf folded once where the breading press closed. The 2012 sodium and saturated fat rules forced manufacturers to reformulate the breading. The crunch is softer, and the salt is missing. Open-faced cheese dreams turned simple ingredients into something that felt special enough to serve on real plates with proper attention. The preparation began with buttered bread topped with sliced cheese, then placed under the broiler until the cheese bubbled and turned golden brown at the edges. This wasn't merely cheese toast, but a composed dish that seniors living alone could make feel like an event worth sitting down to enjoy. The broiling transformed ordinary American or cheddar into something almost sophisticated, with crispy edges and molten centers that satisfied deeply. Some cooks added tomato slices beneath the cheese, variations that stretched a simple concept into infinite possibilities. For those cooking alone, Cheese Dreams offered portion control, since each slice of bread represented a deliberate serving. The ingredients cost mere pennies and required no special shopping, making this lunch accessible any day. Though the name has faded from vocabulary, broiled cheese on toast remains comfort food at its purest. Hoe cake cornbread was humble food with the weight of generations behind it. Mixed from cornmeal, salt, and water, it was poured thin into a skillet or, long ago, onto the flat of a hoe blade held over an open fire. It crisped at the edges and stayed tender in the middle, strong enough to hold beans, greens, or slices of salt pork. Each cake was both meal and utensil, eaten with calloused fingers and quiet gratitude. Hoe cake cornbread carried the flavor of smoke and history, of families who worked from dawn to dark and gave thanks for even the smallest blessings. It was simple food, but never small in meaning, a recipe that traveled through generations, feeding hearts as much as stomachs. Turkey tetrazzini squares offered a clever twist on a post-holiday classic, transforming leftover turkey and noodles into neat, sliceable portions. Creamy mushroom sauce coated strands of spaghetti and chunks of turkey, all baked until the top formed a delicate golden crust. Once cooled slightly, the pan was cut into perfect squares that held together just long enough to reach a tray. The rich aroma of garlic and cheese drifted through the lunchroom, giving every student hope that today's meal would taste like something from home. Children loved the way each bite combined tender turkey, creamy sauce, and chewy pasta in one satisfying mouthful. It was a dish that made leftovers feel like a celebration, proving that creativity and thrift could produce something special. Turkey tetrazzini squares are a delicious memory of a time when nothing was wasted, and every holiday bird found a second life in the school cafeteria. So far, we have two solid options for salads with a sandwich variation for one of them, but what if you do not like protein in your salads? Want them on the sweeter, more dessert-y side? Then molded cranberry orange salads have your name written on them wrapped up in a bow. Some normal or raspberry gelatin and frozen cranberries, plus apples and oranges cut into wedges, would make for an incredibly sweet and delightful salad that had everything you wanted in it taste-wise. It also did wonders for your skin with a steady supply of vitamins and the benefits of cranberries. So not only would grandmothers make this for their beloved families, but they would sneak a bowl on the side for themselves too. Despite the ingredients being relatively easy to get, this was more of an upper-class dish popular in affluent areas. Pineapple chicken is a sweet nod to the mid-20th century love affair with combining fruit and savory elements in one dish. It features juicy chunks of chicken cooked with pineapple and bell peppers, all doused in a tangy sweet sauce made from vinegar, brown sugar, and soy sauce. This fusion reflects the period's fascination with Hawaiian and Polynesian cultures, which influenced many American culinary trends. This dish was all the rage, bringing a bit of tropical flair to the dinner table with its vibrant colors and bold flavors. However, as culinary trends shifted towards more authentic and less sugary interpretations of ethnic cuisines, pineapple chicken's popularity waned. These days, the preference for subtler, more balanced flavors means dishes like this are less common, though it still pops up at family gatherings or potlucks. While we're on the topic of sweets, let's talk about baked apples with cinnamon. They were the ultimate Depression-era dessert, which could turn just a few apples into something that felt warm and comforting. Apples were relatively inexpensive and easy to come by, and baking them with a sprinkle of cinnamon transformed them into a dessert that made everyone feel like they were indulging. Making baked apples was as simple as coring the apples, placing them in a dish, and stuffing the centers with a mix of cinnamon, sugar, and maybe a little butter if you had some. And into the oven they'd go. In a matter of minutes, your house smelled like a bakery from dreams. The apples would soften, their natural sweetness was enhanced by the cinnamon, and the result was a dish that felt way more luxurious than it actually was. This was a dessert that required very few ingredients, but the payoff was huge. It was warm and delicious, and made you feel like you were eating something truly special, even in the middle of hard times. Whether served on their own or with a bit of cream if you had it, baked apples with cinnamon were a simple pleasure that lifted spirits without draining the pantry. We're going to take a bit of a deep dive into a cuisine that we haven't really explored before. I'm talking about caponata, which is a very traditional Sicilian dish that goes all the way back to the 18th century. It's supposed to be a sailor's dish. Can you believe that? It got that reputation attached to it because the birthplace of caponata was Sicily. There's no specific restaurant or name that's credited with making it, but if you ever went there, you'd know just how much the people appreciate this. The first time this became popular in America was when Mediterranean cuisine and Italian immigrants were mixing together and creating all sorts of new dishes, as well as bringing old familiar ones from their homeland. The best part about this dish for a lot of people was that it gave a chance to a vegetable, which otherwise people just aren't too fond of. I mean, eggplants aren't really the most main course worthy idea you could think of, right? Pair that up with some tomatoes, onions, olives, and capers and cook it in vinegar, sugar, and olive oil. Make a nice little traditional agrodolce sauce, and you'll get this extremely earthy dish with a lot of complex flavors going for it. Bread pudding offers a creative solution for utilizing leftover bread in school cafeterias, turning potential waste into a delectable dessert. This dish is typically prepared by cubing stale bread and soaking it in a mixture made from milk, eggs, sugar, and vanilla, which infuses it with rich flavors and a soft texture. Often, additions like raisins or cinnamon are mixed in to enhance the taste and appeal of the pudding. Bread pudding is then baked until the top layer caramelizes into a golden crust, contrasting beautifully with the creamy custard-like interior. This dessert is particularly popular in schools due to its economical benefits and the comfort it provides to students. The warm, sweet nature of bread pudding makes it a welcomed treat, encouraging students to partake in school meals while providing them with a source of energy. Number 15, chicken patty on a bun. The patty was a perfectly round disc of pressed white meat, breaded and frozen, baked on a sheet pan in batches of 40 for 15 minutes. It went on a soft white bun with a leaf of iceberg lettuce and a single slice of pickle. No mayonnaise, no mustard, no condiment unless you asked. The patty was so round and uniform that you sometimes pulled it out of your bun and held it up like a coin. A kid in Tulsa or Tallahassee or Toledo could walk into any school cafeteria in 1987 and find the same chicken patty on the same bun, because all of them came from 3 commodity processors contracted by the USDA. The breading carried too much sodium under the 2012 standards. A whole grain bun replaced the white bun. The new version sits softer in the bun. Peanut butter on crackers served as the no-nonsense lunch that required absolutely nothing beyond opening a jar and a sleeve of saltines. For seniors living alone, this combination provided protein, fat, and carbohydrates in a form needing no refrigeration, no cooking, and no cleanup beyond wiping a knife. The peanut butter's richness satisfied hunger in ways that plain crackers never could, while the salt enhanced the nutty sweetness. A jar of peanut butter cost roughly 40 cents and lasted weeks, making it one of the most economical protein sources available. The crackers stayed fresh in their wax paper sleeves, ready whenever appetite struck. This wasn't a meal that impressed anyone, but it kept energy levels stable through afternoon hours. Many seniors ate this combination while reading or watching television, appreciating that it could be consumed without sitting at a table. Though simple to the point of seeming inadequate, peanut butter on crackers sustained countless quiet lunchtimes. Cornmeal mush squares were proof that mountain folks could turn the simplest ingredients into comfort. Cornmeal, water, and a pinch of salt were cooked into a thick porridge at night, poured into a pan, and left to cool until firm. By morning, it's sliced clean, ready to be fried in bacon grease until crisp and golden on the outside. The inside stayed soft and creamy, making it a meal that worked hot or cold, plain or with a drizzle of syrup. It was food that didn't spoil fast, didn't cost much, and didn't need anything fancy to taste right. Even when cupboards were bare, there was always cornmeal to rely on. Its smell filled the kitchen like a promise, warm and earthy, steady as the sunrise. Every bite carried the comfort of routine and the pride of making something from almost nothing. In the mountains, that was enough to keep spirits strong. Goulash Midwest style filled giant steel pans with elbow macaroni, ground beef, and a slow-simmered tomato sauce that could stretch to feed an entire cafeteria. The noodles soaked up the savory juices until every bite delivered both comfort and fullness, making it a reliable favorite when budgets were tight. Lunch ladies stirred vats of the bubbling mixture with long wooden paddles, and the smell of tomatoes and browned beef drifted down school hallways, luring students long before the bell rang. A sprinkle of dried oregano or a dash of black pepper was the only seasoning needed to make it feel like a special treat. Children returned for second helpings, knowing the warmth of that simple dish would carry them through the afternoon's lessons. It was hearty, inexpensive, and endlessly adaptable, a dish that symbolized how school kitchens turned plain staples into memorable meals. Goulash Midwest style remains a shining example of how resourceful cooking and a little spice transformed ordinary ingredients into a lunch many still crave today. Brown Betties were one of the most classic American desserts to ever grace the table of an American kid. Something that might be seen as an old-fashioned dessert now, but used to be the next best thing after an apple pie. The flavors of a Brown Betty usually come from the spiced apples and other fruit-layered dishes, which are really buttery. The sugary breadcrumbs on top give it a crunch, which really adds to the entire vibe of the Brown Betty. You're looking for a warm, comforting dish that gets you in a nostalgic mood. Something you can sit down with and enjoy bite for bite, not rush through. It's an experience that you want to savor, like an empty, windy street as you walk down by and enjoy it. The Brown Betty was definitely something that would get you up out into the street, whether you were going to visit your grandma's for an authentic pie or a nearby bakery to reminisce about childhood days. The earliest recipes you can find are the ones from 1866, but those are more like apple Bettys than the ones we're talking about. Either way, this dish has definitely evolved alongside the population, and those who grew up with it will remember it fondly. Spam fritters are also pretty much exactly what you think aren't. They sound like a cutesy dish your wife whips up for you before you come home. But this is actually a wartime dish through and through. Thick slices of canned Spam dipped in batter and then deep fried until they're gloriously golden, pure fish and chip style. The outside is as crunchy and hot as you would expect, and the inside is tender, slightly salty and addictively chewy in the way only Spam can be. The flavor is literally just comfort food. It's slightly smoky, the perfect amount of meaty without being overwhelming, and it balances out with the salty notes. This is a dish that makes no apologies and instead chooses to embrace its greasy nature to give you a taste of nostalgia wherever you are. Spam fritters were something that exploded in popularity during World War II, and meat rationing was still a massive thing. Spam, courtesy of American Lend-Lease supplies, started to become what people were relying on because of how easy it was to work with. It was the working-class answer to the age-old question of, how do we make canned meat something that feels like a proper meal? And Spam fritters stuck around even after the war, too, especially in towns where factory work was a lot more common than any other kind of job. Hey, you might not be fighting a war anymore, but that 9 to 5 is still no joke. Grits and butter were a foundational meal for a lot of different kinds of poor families, but this was particularly true for anybody living in the South. This was even more true for black sharecroppers and tenant farmers. Working-class white families survived most of the 19th and 20th centuries off of foods like this too, but it really cemented itself as a staple of the black community back then. Corn was one of the most widely grown crops in the South, and grits, which were just ground hominy and cornmeal, were a very nice byproduct. Plus, back then, people lived and died by the waste absolutely nothing mentality. They would not let any byproduct go to waste because why should they? It was something they could get in bulk for literally a few pennies. Plus, just like rice and potatoes, grits provided an incredible amount of stamina and energy. Laborers often were also poor and did not have the money to really buy elaborate rations or pick and choose their nutrition, so starchy, fibrous foods were their best friends. So this is a bit of a tricky name to pronounce even when you give it a genuine try, but it's worth knowing about this dish because of how good it is. Ballymaloe Irish lamb stew is something that comes all the way from County Cork, and lamb stew is something that Americans welcome with very open arms. You can particularly find this dish being spread in droves around St. Patrick's Day in any Irish-American community. Whether you're in New Hampshire or Rhode Island, which even today have a pretty solid amount of Irishmen living in them, you're bound to run into a Ballymaloe stew once in a while. Despite how good of a stew it is, with tender carrots, potatoes, and tender strips of lamb, and how simple the preparation is since it relies mostly on the natural flavors present in the ingredients, this dish actually flopped once before. Well, I wouldn't say it was a true flop, but it did fade out of the memory of the general public before too, That was before the 20th century, but ever since then it has been seeing a bit of a revival thanks to social media and Ballymaloe House, which is what it's named after. Either way, this is one of the best recipes to ever come out of a family cookbook. And if you've ever had one while at an Irish friend's home, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Fried rice with vegetables was the ultimate Depression-era hack for making leftovers exciting again. Day-old rice was the perfect base because it was cheap, filling, and easy to stretch. And just like with rice pudding with raisins, rice came to steal the show. You'd take whatever vegetables were on hand, carrots, peas, onions, or anything nearing its expiration date, toss them in a hot pan with a bit of oil, and fry it all together until golden and fragrant. Nothing, and I mean nothing, goes to waste. This dish was about making the most of what you had. It didn't matter if the veggies were a little past their prime because once they hit the pan, they were given a new life. A little soy sauce or garlic added a ton of flavor, and if you were lucky enough to have an egg, you could crack one in for extra protein. The fried rice was a genius way to turn scraps into something satisfying. It was fast, flavorful, and filling, everything you needed in a meal when times were tough. Plus, it was incredibly versatile. You could throw in any leftover meat or keep it vegetarian, and it would still be a hearty dish that stretched the food budget. The list would be incomplete without mentioning America's beloved lunch sandwiches. Grinders from Connecticut were popular in the 1970s as a go-to-lunch for many corporate workers during their breaks. Popping up at local diners and delis, Grinders was a long sandwich filled with deli meats, cheese, and vegetables. Creamed spinach in school cafeterias combines nutritional value with palatable presentation, making it a favored vegetable dish among students. The preparation starts with fresh or frozen spinach, which is thoroughly washed and then cooked down until it wilts. A creamy sauce made from a blend of milk, flour, and butter is prepared separately, seasoned with a hint of nutmeg or garlic to enrich the flavor profile. The spinach is then incorporated into the sauce, which gently coats the leaves, creating a smooth and appealing texture. This dish not only adds a vibrant color to the plate, but also increases the intake of greens in students' diets, providing essential nutrients like iron, vitamin A, and calcium. The combination of creamy texture and mild flavors often helps to introduce and encourage a preference for vegetables among younger children, supporting school nutrition programs in their goal to foster healthier eating habits. Take a bite into the past with bologna boats, a fun and inventive lunchtime creation from mid-20th century America. These unique creations start with slices of bologna, heated and shaped into whimsical boat-like forms, then filled with a hearty helping of creamy mashed potatoes, gooey melted cheese, or savory baked beans. School cafeterias were particularly fond of serving these as a fun, kid-friendly option. The versatility of bologna boats is notable, with some versions including macaroni and cheese or even chili for those seeking something more substantial. They emerged as a clever way to utilize common pantry staples creatively, providing a budget-friendly meal solution during times when stretching the grocery budget was necessary. Creamed chipped beef, often fondly referred to as SOS by those who've served in the military, is a simple dish of dried beef in a white sauce, typically spooned over toast. This dish's nickname, "shit on a shingle," comes from its appearance and was a humorous yet endearing term used by service members. It gained fame in military settings for its straightforward, filling nature, making use of economical ingredients to feed many mouths. Despite its practical roots and comforting taste, its appeal has dwindled in civilian life, where fresher, zestier flavors are now in vogue. The modern palate tends to favor dishes that are lower in sodium and fat, moving away from heavier cream-based comfort foods in favor of lighter, more nuanced culinary options. Number 14. The peanut butter bar with chocolate frosting. The bar was one of the most beautiful objects a 1980s cafeteria ever produced, and every child knew it. The recipe lived on a single index card in the lunch lady's binder. 1 pound of butter, 3 cups of peanut butter, 4 cups of powdered sugar, 6 cups of graham cracker crumbs, all mixed by hand in a stainless bowl the size of a baby bath. The mixture was pressed into a half-sheet pan, half an inch thick, then topped with melted milk chocolate and butter, smoothed flat with the back of a long spatula, and chilled in the walk-in for 2 hours. The lunch lady cut it into 36 perfect rectangles with a knife dipped in hot water between every cut. A single bar weighed nearly 3 ounces and tasted like a Reese's cup pressed into a brick. Kids traded their orange wedges, their carrots, their entire entree for an extra peanut butter bar. A second grader in Akron once kept hers in your lunchbox for 3 days and rationed it in pencil eraser-sized bites because she did not believe she would ever taste anything that good again. The peanut butter bar appeared on the 4-week rotation exactly twice a month, and on the morning the bar was on your menu, attendance in some elementary schools rose by 7%. Older lunch ladies were said to bake an extra pan and tuck it into the warming oven for the teachers, because the teachers traded for them too. The bar had everything a 1980s child wanted in a single object. It was sweet, it was rich, it was salty under the chocolate, and it filled a small hand. And then in 2014, the new federal Smart Snacks rule capped your dessert serving at 200 kilocalories and limited the sugar to 35% of total weight. The peanut butter bar carried 460 kilocalories and well over half its weight in sugar. It was pulled from cafeteria lines in most American districts within 18 months. The recipe survives only in church cookbooks and in PTA fundraisers, and in the memories of the kids who walked past the dessert window in 1986 and saw the chocolate gleaming under the lights like a window in a candy store. Canned corned beef hash transformed from breakfast fare into a satisfying lunch when seniors needed something hot and filling without elaborate preparation. The can contained pre-mixed corned beef and potatoes that fried up crispy in a skillet with minimal attention, creating a meal that tasted far more substantial than its modest cost suggested. For those living alone, one can provide enough hash for a generous serving with perhaps some left for tomorrow. The preparation required only opening the can, scooping contents into a hot skillet, and pressing down until a golden crust formed. Some added a fried egg on top, though many ate it plain with ketchup. The salty, meaty flavor satisfied cravings for something savory and warm, especially on cold days. Canned hash kept indefinitely in pantries, ready whenever the mood struck. At roughly 35 cents per can, it represented remarkable value for protein and carbohydrates. This humble canned product sustained generations who understood that convenience and economy could coexist. Bouillon, poke salad and egg sandwiches were spring's first gift after a long winter's wait. When pokeweed shoots pushed through thawed soil, foragers gathered them young before bitterness set in. The leaves were boiled 3 times to wash away poison, then chopped, drained, and fried in bacon grease until dark and rich. Layered with slices of hard-boiled egg between bread, it became a hearty field lunch, fresh, filling, and full of life. The greens gave a wild tang that spoke of earth and rain, while the eggs brought comfort and weight. It was food born from patience and care, a reward for knowing the land well enough to take only what it offered. In the mountains, such meals weren't poor. They were proof that nature always paid back in flavor and grace. Baked corn pudding brought a gentle sweetness to the lunch line, a golden casserole where fresh or canned corn mingled with eggs, milk, and a touch of sugar. When the pans emerged from the oven, the top was lightly browned while the inside stayed soft and custardy, a perfect balance of savory and sweet. Children loved the way the kernels popped against the creamy base, offering a satisfying texture with every bite. The smell of warm corn and butter greeted students as they shuffled their trays forward, promising comfort before the first spoonful. Teachers praised it as a vegetable dish, while kids simply enjoyed it as an unexpected treat that felt almost like dessert. It paired well with roasted meats or stood alone as a hearty side that filled empty stomachs without fuss. Baked corn pudding captured the spirit of the 1960s cafeteria. Simple, nourishing, and quietly indulgent, a dish that made an ordinary school day taste like a Sunday dinner. Are you a big fan of deli food? Deli meats, sandwiches, loaves, that kind of thing? Then one of the best parts of that kind of eating was the olive loaf. It was usually made with pork and beef plus chopped green olives, which is what it became known for. There was a small, brief period before convenience foods started taking over America, where processed meats were really becoming a thing, and this dish was a big part of that time, which arguably spanned all over the 1940s to the 1970s. It had an extremely loyal fan base too, as this was responsible for many deli counters still staying in business. These days, you could find retro stalls that still do a mean olive load, but the days where this was a commonplace item on the street and something you'd see your grandma cooking up are long gone in America's history. People definitely remember the flavors of the bologna, the ham loaves, and all the amazing dips they came with, though. Stew in a thermos is really a classic. This is something that combines a lot of different things to make a unique meal that you wouldn't think of on your own. A thermos is something you usually use for drinks. It doesn't always have to be water, but stew's in there? Not really anyone's first thought. For those who need a warm meal right on the go, though, this was the most reliable thing in the world, especially when you would be working in the winter. Thick and tender chunks of meat mixed in with roto vegetables like carrots and potatoes and simmered in a rich and flavorful broth that gets thickened up even more with some flour and cornstarch. I mean, what's not to like? The flavor oozes out of that thermos as soon as you open it is next level. Stew in a thermos was a game changer for workers during the 50s and 60s. It didn't matter what your job was, whether you were a truck driver, worked a night shift in a factory, or ran numbers behind a desk. Even kids in school would take it along with them. The thermos lets you pack a hearty and warm meal that could pretty much survive hours inside the bottle without losing its essence. You had to have some trial and error here first, though, because most people would often make the stew too liquidy on their first try or two, and it would end up spilling over once you unscrewed the lid. Thermos-steeped stew became something of a regional favorite in northern areas where the temperature was really known to drop, and I think it's a cute little dish we could bring back today too. Sugar bread was an inexpensive meal that a lot of poor Americans, especially children, ate when there was nothing else they had. It was something that was literally just as bare bones as you could imagine. Plain bread, sprinkled with only a modest amount of sugar, spread with butter and dipped in a little bit of milk. It was a way to stretch ingredients, but people tried their best to make it feel like it was a sweet treat regardless. Of course, it was hard to take it that way, but it really shows you how resilient people were and how ingenious their plans were when it came to rationing things out. Bread was really cheap and filling, and it was especially one of the best things people who were farmsteaders relied on. Plus, sugar was also just as important for people who lived in the city. It was a quick burst of energy that really set people right, and while it was not cheap, a small amount could do a lot for a plain slice of bread. Also, that crunch was just addictive. You didn't need to cook it, and it was a decent pick-me-up for what it was worth. Bacon. Crackers, I mean, sure, they're pretty good even as a typical easygoing breakfast, but what do we really do here? You eat something enough times, you tend to get used to it and get bored. How do you get around that? Well, since the topic is retro dishes, we used to hear a lot about bacon bow tie crackers back in the day. It was something you could find for breakfast or a cocktail appetizer, which is some serious versatility. The crackers were extra crispy since they were wrapped inside bacon and then baked until the bacon itself was pretty crispy. It was the perfect combo, and all they needed was each other to realize that. It was smoky but sweet. It was also savory, but buttery smooth and not dry at all. Dishes that are such neat little combinations like these are often hiding right under your nose, and if we didn't have the imagination of so many home chefs who found these and got them into the public sphere, then we'd be a lot more tasteless as a country. So the next two dishes we have on the list are actually some classics right out of Africa, and its many very. The savory grilled cheese sandwich was the Depression-era comfort food that made even the simplest meal feel indulgent and like you were having a feast. With just bread and cheese, you could create a warm, melty sandwich that instantly lifted your spirits and comforted you during the hard times. The bread was cheap, and cheese was a luxury, but a little bit went a long way when you fried it up between two slices of bread. The secret to a perfect grilled cheese was in the toasting. You'd butter the bread or use whatever fat you had. Lard worked too, and fry it in a hot pan until golden brown and crispy. The cheese would melt inside, creating a gooey center that made this sandwich popular to this day, even though the ingredients were simple. If you were lucky, you could add extras like tomatoes or onions, but even on its own, A grilled cheese sandwich was a crowd pleaser. This meal was quick, easy, and, most importantly, cheap. It was perfect for lunch or dinner, and you didn't need much to make it satisfying. In tough times, a grilled cheese sandwich was a little slice of comfort, proving that even the most basic ingredients could come together to create something delicious. Idaho particularly loves their potatoes, so it's no surprise that the potato soup was their favorite lunch. With a staggering 300,000 acres of potatoes produced in the 1970s, Idaho locals explored what they could make with the influx of potatoes. In comes the potato soup, a creamy soup made with Idaho potatoes served with bacon and cheese. Rice pudding is a classic dessert that finds its way into school menus, beloved for its simplicity and comforting qualities. Made by slowly simmering rice in milk until the grains are tender, this pudding is sweetened with sugar and typically flavored with vanilla, cinnamon, or even a bit of citrus zest to elevate the dish's aroma and taste. The slow cooking process allows the rice to absorb the flavors and the milk to thicken into a rich, creamy texture. Rice pudding can be served either warm or chilled, making it a versatile option for different seasons and preferences. Its gentle, creamy texture and the mild, sweet flavor profile make it an excellent choice for a school dessert, offering a source of carbohydrate and calcium. Peanut butter and bacon sandwiches represent a bold fusion of flavors, combining the smooth, slightly sweet taste of peanut butter with the crispy, savory bite of bacon. This combination was part of a broader mid-century trend of experimenting with sweet and savory pairings, which included other famous concoctions like chicken and waffles. Popular in mid-20th century America, this sandwich typically involves a generous spread of peanut butter on toasted bread, topped with strips of crunchy bacon. The king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, was known to enjoy this sandwich with added slices of banana, introducing a sweet layer to the salty-sweet mix. This quirky combination was emblematic of a period when Americans were open to experimenting with diverse and unexpected flavor pairings, creating memorable and satisfying meals. Pimento cheese really kicked off in the early 20th century, thanks to some clever innovations in the U.S. dairy industry. It's a simple mix: grated cheddar, pimento peppers, and a dollop of mayonnaise, creating a spread that's both creamy and has a nice kick from those sweet peppers. This spread really took off in the South, where pimentos were as common as sunshine, becoming a go-to for sandwiches, celery fillers, or slathered on a burger at a backyard barbecue. The thing about pimento cheese is its adaptability. Over the years, folks have jazzed it up with jalapenos, onions, or a dash of smoked paprika, catering to all sorts of taste buds. While its star has dimmed a bit, overtaken by the surge in artisanal cheeses and spreads, it once ruled the roost at Southern gatherings, perfectly complementing the comfort food vibe. Number 13, mashed potatoes with brown gravy. The potatoes came as dehydrated flakes in a 50-pound bag from the USDA commodity program, reconstituted with hot water, butter, and a splash of whole milk in a steam kettle. A wire whip on a long handle blended them in 3 minutes. The brown gravy came from a powdered base mixed with hot water in a smaller pot. A number 12 scoop dropped a perfect dome of potatoes on each tray like a small white hill, and a 4-ounce ladle covered it with gravy. The gravy ran down the slope and pooled in the corner of your compartment, and you would dip a tater tot in it before the corn even hit the tray. The 2012 standards did not pull mashed potatoes outright, but the powdered gravy disappeared because of the sodium count. The new gravy is thinner and tastes nothing like the version a 1986 kid remembers. Bouillon with crackers provided warmth and comfort when appetites were small, but something hot seemed necessary. Those little cubes dissolved in boiling water to create a steaming cup of broth that cost mere pennies, yet delivered genuine satisfaction. For seniors living alone, bouillon represented the simplest possible hot lunch, requiring only a kettle and a mug. The broth's salty warmth felt nourishing, even when solid food held no appeal, making it particularly valuable during illness or on days when energy for cooking didn't exist. Crackers floating in the broth or eaten alongside provided substance, turning liquid into something approaching a meal. Beef and chicken varieties offered options, though many seniors kept both in their pantries. The cubes stored indefinitely and took up almost no space, making them essential emergency provisions. This wasn't lunch that anyone bragged about, but it served its purpose admirably. On cold afternoons, a cup of bouillon brought comfort that belied its simplicity. Vinegar pie slices were a forgotten miracle of thrift, bright, tangy, and sweet all at once. When lemons were scarce and fresh fruit out of reach, mountain cooks made do with vinegar, sugar, and eggs to create something that tasted every bit as fine. The filling baked into a glossy custard with a soft, buttery crust that held its shape even in the summer heat. It needed no refrigeration, no fancy ingredients, just patience and a steady hand. Wrapped in wax paper or newspaper, slices went into lunch pails beside coffee jars and biscuits. The first bite was sharp and surprising, but by the second, the vinegar's sting mellowed into a warm, caramel-like sweetness. It was a pie that aged gracefully, growing richer over time, a small reward for those who worked hard and wasted nothing. It became a staple of mountain kitchens, a quiet symbol of resourceful living. What began as imitation lemon pie turned into something uniquely its own, humble yet elegant in its simplicity. Vinegar pie proved that flavor could come from imagination, not luxury, and that even in lean years, sweetness could still find its way to the table and make life a little softer. Croque madames involve layers of melted cheese smothered between freshly baked, crisp white bread. And to top it all off, there's an intense, smoky flavor from the ham. The best part about it is that it takes minutes to make, and it was one of the more fancy dishes that people would create when they were feeling like having a bit of an extravagant dinner. Everyone deserves to treat themselves sometimes, but for home chefs, especially grandparents, the biggest treat is often just seeing everyone eat up every last bite of what they've made. That was never a problem if croque madames were the dish being served, because nobody could resist this classic American sandwich that did more than its fair share of justice to ham. Poached or lightly fried eggs as a topping also made it work a lot better. And by the way, they are called croque madames because the poached eggs seem to resemble women's luxury hats in the 90s. Around the later half of the 20th century, there was this big public paranoia that had spread concerning health and the after effects of the way Americans had been eating. Cold roast beef sandwiches are the perfect example of how less is sometimes more. And this wasn't just more, it was iconic. You've got some juicy roast beef, slice after slice stacked on top of each other, sandwiched between slightly crusty white bread. It's literally a Scooby-Doo snack. The beef is something seasoned with salt, pepper, and a lot of mustard, or horseradish. It's actually something that packs a pretty substantial kick. Now, sometimes people would add a slice of cheddar or Swiss cheese and throw in some fresh vegetables like lettuce and tomatoes. But the star of this show was always that decadent, juicy roast beef that was just thin enough. It had an incredibly satisfying flavor, and it was something that was really just carried by the natural flavors that were already there. No extra work needed. Cold roast beef sandwiches were something that became really common to see in American lunchboxes and deli counters by the early 20th century, especially during and after the wartime era and the Great Depression. It was one of the most economical lunches you could get for yourself, and people really wanted to be spending as little on food as possible, which is pretty different from our mindset today. Cabbage and noodles were one of the most affordable vegetable-based dishes you could get for yourself. The best thing about cabbages were the way they were available year-round, and let me just put things into perspective for you. Back then, the seasonal nature of things was something that was instrumental to how people planned out their budgets, their groceries, and what they were going to be eating that week. You may also think that without refrigeration, noodles wouldn't really be sustainable, but people would simply make the noodles from scratch when they needed it. Hard work, I know, but at least you didn't need a lot of the stuff. A simple head of cabbage, one bag of noodles that was enough to feed a family of up to 4 and 5, and it was an incredibly popular thing in cities, though there may have been some cultural gaps in preferences. In the South, it never really caught on the same way. It's definitely quite a refreshing dish, though. Now, cuisines. First off, we have chicken and collard greens pilau, which is just the perfect dish to have if you're aching for something that involves a lot of rice in it. The steamed and boiled chicken mixed with the pilau as a base for the dish gives it an aroma that's pretty much unbeatable. Back in the middle of the 20th century, if you really wanted to experiment with some foreign cooking and tastes, then you would go into African American communities and try out the best of their soul food. You'd have to look around a little for the really nice restaurants, especially if you were in places like the southern parts of America, but nonetheless, people found a way. Pilau itself is also a dish that's extremely common in the subcontinent for many reasons. People use basmati rice for this, which is a little different from the rice you guys might be used to, but if you give it a shot, you might find that it has a more full flavor all around. Also, don't even get me started on how good this is for you. If you're a gym bro looking for a great way to add some tasty protein and carbs to your diet, then chicken and collard greens with some pilau is a pretty flawless place to start. Simple egg drop soup was a staple because it took next to nothing to make, but still felt like a real meal. What you needed was some broth, homemade or from whatever scraps you could find, and a few eggs. You'd bring a broth to a simmer, whisk the eggs in a bowl, and slowly and carefully drizzle them in a hot liquid while stirring. The eggs would instantly cook, turning into soft, silky ribbons that made the soup what it is to this day. If you've got leftover veggies, be prepared to make this soup, and if you've got meat, even better. You've just made yourself a delicacy. Egg drop soup was a meal that stretched what little you had left while still managing to be comforting and filling. Even if you were running low on ingredients, egg drop soup made you feel like you were eating something homemade and special, instead of scraps you could barely gather. It could warm you up, fill you up, and the best thing of all, it took you, maybe and only maybe, about 5 minutes to make. Georgia's lunch special in the 1970s was the pimento cheese sandwich. Simply put, it was a sandwich filled with a creamy, tangy pimento cheese spread created using shredded cheese, mayo, and diced red pimentos. Pimento cheese was especially famous in Georgia because there was a surge in commercial advertisements of the spread in the state. Peanut butter and jelly bars take the quintessential American sandwich and transform it into a dessert format that is both nostalgic and delicious. This treat is prepared by layering a base of crumbly, buttery dough in a baking dish, spreading a generous amount of peanut butter and then jelly over the base, and topping it with more of the crumbly dough. The bars are then baked until the topping is lightly browned, resulting in a dessert that is rich in flavor and has a satisfying texture contrast between the soft filling and the crunchy topping. These bars incorporate the familiar flavors of peanut butter and jelly in a form that is easy to distribute and consume, making them an excellent addition to school lunch menus. Peanut butter and jelly bars not only provide a source of energy, but also bring a sense of comfort and nostalgia to the dining hall. Spam and pineapple sandwiches capture a uniquely American taste for sweet and savory combinations that soared in popularity during World War II. Introduced to the American military in 1937, Spam became a staple in many households. The recipe for Spam and pineapple sandwiches represents the culinary influence of Hawaii on the mainland, which intensified after Hawaii became a state in 1959. The sandwich features crispy slices of fried Spam paired with sweet, slightly charred pineapple rings, nestled between slices of toasted bread. This blend of salty meat with the caramelized sweetness of pineapple provides a delightful contrast in flavors. Optionally dressed with mayonnaise or a slice of cheese, these sandwiches reflect a significant Hawaiian influence on mainland American cuisine, particularly during the 1950s when Hawaiian culture gained widespread appeal. The result is a dish that marries diverse culinary traditions in a uniquely satisfying way. Launched in 1937 by Hormel Foods, Spam quickly became a staple during World War II thanks to its long shelf life and ease of use. Spam sandwiches, which might be grilled or not, served with simple condiments like mustard or mayo, were a hit, particularly where fresh meat was scarce. In Hawaii, Spam became so popular that it led to the creation of the local favorite, Spam musubi, combining the canned meat with rice and seaweed. Over time, however, the popularity of Spam sandwiches has waned. While marketing once played up Spam's affordability and versatility, shifts towards health and quality have lessened its appeal. Despite this, Spam remains a cultural icon in places like Hawaii, where it stars in local dishes like Spam musubi, showcasing its unique role in regional cuisines. Number 12. The Square Cafeteria Hamburger. The patty was 4.5 ounces of frozen ground beef, pressed flat in a perfect square the size of a playing card, baked on a sheet pan in batches of 40 for 12 minutes. The bun was a square white roll cut to match. You asked for ketchup and mustard from the condiment table and squirted both from giant pump dispensers. The square hamburger was a Wednesday lunch in most districts because the round buns came in on Tuesday and went out for the chicken patty. The cafeteria simply ran out of round buns and used squares for the hamburger, so nothing went to waste. A kid eating one in 1986 thought it was the most natural shape for a burger, like a window pane between bread, because you had never seen another. By 2014, your bun had to be whole grain rich, and the patty had to be 90% lean. The square shape was abandoned because the new bun came pre-cut and round only. Canned pork and beans delivered complete nutrition in a form that seniors living alone could heat and eat within minutes. The beans provided protein and fiber, while the sweet tomato sauce made them palatable without additional seasoning. A single can cost roughly 15 cents and contained enough beans for a satisfying lunch, often with leftovers for the next day. The preparation couldn't have been simpler. Open the can, pour into a saucepan, and heat until bubbling. Some seniors ate them straight from the pan to save washing dishes. The small pieces of pork fat added richness that plain beans lacked, though the quantity was never enough to feel heavy. Served with bread to soak up the sauce, pork and beans became a complete meal that stuck to the ribs through afternoon hours. The cans stacked neatly in pantries and lasted years without spoiling. For generations raised during the Depression, pork and beans represented security. This humble product never pretended to be fancy, but it fed millions who valued reliability. Liverwurst on rye. The egg and cress sandwich is literally so perfect yet basic that it makes no sense this dish ever faded into the sidelines. Hard-boiled eggs get chopped up and mixed with mayonnaise or butter before they're topped with a generous serving of cress between 2 slices of soft white bread. This is an egg salad if I've ever heard of one, and the creamy richness of it combined with the peppery crest makes for a refreshing, zingy bite that really knocks you into the present moment. Egg and cress sandwiches are something you would consider British, right? Just off of the vibes? You'd be smart to assume that. This sandwich was a really popular choice in the middle of the 20th century, especially because after World War II, rationing might have eased up. But that doesn't mean that meat became widely available overnight. These days, egg and cress sandwiches are just a retro memory, but they used to be the ideal lunch to take to work or school. Pinto beans and cornbread was a lot more than just a simple staple meal that people were relying on to get by. It was something that was essentially just survival. Pinto beans were considered very cheap and nutritious, and they were one of the most affordable sources of protein. They were packed with fiber, calories, and they were really filling. Dried beans were also resistant to being spoiled, and they could be bought in bulk, stored for months, and just be used in a variety of different ways. Pinto beans were also really good because they did not require much cooking equipment for it to work. Cornmeal was something that was widely available, a lot cheaper than your typical wheat flour, and it was something that didn't require any kind of yeast either. You just needed water, salt, and a little bit of pepper. Some pots and a cast iron skillet would work perfectly fine, and the best part was that this would last literally days and days, although the kids definitely had to get used to it. My personal favorite from this list, mashed potato patties. They were a genius way to use up leftover potatoes while creating a tasty treat. Potatoes going to waste during the Great Depression? Now that's just vile. It was like the 8 deadly sins. If you had leftover mashed potatoes, you'd mix them with a little flour, maybe an egg if you had one, and season them up with salt and pepper. Form them into patties, fry them up in a pan until they are crispy, and suddenly those leftovers were a star of the meal. Their crispy outside and soft inside made them everyone's favorite, even though they were made from the simplest ingredients. You could eat them on their own if you had some gravy or maybe even some vegetables. Now that's a whole meal if you ask me. Mashed potato patties were a hit because they were so easy to make and could feed the whole family with minimal effort. Who doesn't like fried potatoes? I know a person that doesn't. My mother. Nothing fried will ever step foot in her kitchen. So there weren't any potato patties for us. Actually, that's not true. They were just oven-baked. I guess they weren't so bad. I am just bitter that they weren't fired. Fried potato patties were crunchy, satisfying, and a great way to give new life to everyone's favorite pantry staple, potatoes. Stepping aside from sandwiches, states like Hawaii preferred heartier meals like a plate lunch. Plate lunches were typically a meal consisting of rice, macaroni salad, and a meat entree. Customers would get several meat options like teriyaki chicken or kalua pork. It was somewhat akin to modern-day Chinese takeout, but localized for Hawaii. American chop suey is a comfort food classic that has found a niche in American school cafeterias, combining practicality with palatability. This dish melds ground beef, elbow macaroni, and a tomato-based sauce seasoned with onions and bell peppers, all simmered together to allow the flavors to fully integrate. The preparation begins with sautéing onions and bell peppers until they are soft, adding the ground beef to brown, and then incorporating the cooked macaroni and tomato sauce. This mixture is seasoned with herbs such as oregano or basil, and sometimes a dash of Worcestershire sauce for deeper flavor complexity. American chop suey is particularly valued in school settings for its ability to be made in large volumes economically, using ingredients that are staples in most school kitchens. It's also well-suited for holding and serving over extended periods, which is essential in a busy cafeteria environment. Taste the innovation in every hearty bite of Jiffy ground beef cornbread casserole, a triumph of American home cooking. Rising to popularity in the mid-20th century, this casserole marries seasoned ground beef with the simplicity of Jiffy cornbread mix, a product that became a staple in American kitchens following its introduction in the 1930s by the Chelsea Milling Company. The preparation involves browning ground beef with onions, garlic, and a medley of spices, then layering it in a baking dish, topping it with a batter made from the iconic cornbread mix. Once baked, the casserole presents a delightful contrast of flavors and textures, with golden cornbread capping a juicy, flavorful beef base. It became a favored choice for an easy and satisfying meal, perfectly blending ease of preparation with hearty flavors. Pickled beet eggs are a striking dish made from hard-boiled eggs pickled in a mix of beet juice, vinegar, sugar, and spices, turning them a vibrant purple. Rooted in Pennsylvania Dutch cuisine, these eggs were a popular way to preserve and add a kick to the humble egg. They're memorable for their bold color and tangy taste, often popping up in diners and potlucks, especially where traditional preservation techniques were valued. But as home pickling waned and palates evolved towards fresher, more global flavors, pickled beet eggs started to fade from the mainstream. Though once a staple during festive holidays like Easter and a showpiece in buffet spreads, their traditional charm has been overshadowed by more modern culinary trends. Number 11. Macaroni and cheese. The neon yellow color was as much a part of the dish as the noodles, and every American kid in the 1980s knew the exact shade. The recipe came from the 1988 USDA cookbook. 18 pounds of dry elbow pasta, a gallon of whole milk, 2 pounds of butter, and 4 pounds of processed American cheese cut into cubes. The batch baked in a deep hotel pan for 40 minutes until the top crusted into a thin orange sheet, like a small geological layer. A square serving spoon cut portions about the size of a coffee mug. You ate it with a fork and chased the noodles around the plate. The 2012 rules cut the saturated fat allowance per meal to under 10% of total kilocalories. The cheese in the original recipe pushed past 16%. The new mac and cheese is made with reduced fat cheddar and whole grain noodles, and the color is closer to ivory than neon. Carried old-world flavors into American lunchtime, offering rich, spreadable protein that seniors with European roots appreciated. The liver-based spread came in convenient tubes or wrapped logs that kept well in refrigerators for weeks. Spread thickly on dense rye bread, liverwurst created a sandwich with genuine substance and distinctive flavor that stood apart from blander lunch meats. For those living alone, the portion control was natural since you spread only what you needed. The strong, slightly mineral taste paired perfectly with sharp mustard and perhaps a pickle slice, creating complexity from simple components. Many seniors remembered this from childhoods when organ meats were everyday food. The combination of rye bread's earthy chew with liverwurst's creamy richness satisfied in ways that softer breads couldn't match. At roughly 25 cents for a log that made multiple sandwiches, liverwurst represented economical protein. This old-fashioned lunch has largely disappeared from modern tables. Cream cheese, ham hock, and pinto bean pouches were lunches that filled the belly and lasted through the longest days. A single ham hock simmered with a pot of pintos could feed a family for days, the broth thickening into a smoky stew that needed nothing more. Whatever remained after supper was ladled into wax paper pouches or small jars for the next day's work. By noon, the beans had soaked up every ounce of flavor, turning creamy, hearty, and rich. Workers in sawmills, fields, and mines tore open their packets, scooped the contents out with a biscuit, and called it a meal. Salt from the ham kept it savory, the starch from the beans kept it filling, and the slow simmering made it comforting in a way only patience could create. It was food built to last, simple, nourishing, and deeply honest. No one left hungry, and nothing went to waste. Each bite carried the memory of home kitchens and the hum of pots left simmering on wood stoves. It wasn't elegant, but it was strong food, made for strong hands, feeding strength back into the very people who earned it every single day. Cabbage and noodles offered a humble yet satisfying lunch inspired by the Eastern European traditions many Midwestern families brought to the United States. Thin egg noodles were tossed with butter and braised cabbage until everything glistened with savory richness. A dash of black pepper and a sprinkle of salt were all it needed to shine, though some schools added onions for extra flavor. The aroma of slow-cooked cabbage filled the air, signaling a meal that was both thrifty and hearty. Students enjoyed the tender noodles and the slight sweetness of the softened cabbage, a combination that surprised even those who claimed to dislike vegetables. It was a warming dish perfect for chilly afternoons, proving that simple ingredients could create deep comfort. Lunch ladies served generous scoops that stuck to the ribs and fueled long hours of classwork and play. Cabbage and noodles may sound plain today, but in those lunchrooms, it was beloved, a quiet reminder of home-cooked heritage and shared traditions. Thanks to all that rage, we got dishes like vegetable aspic cups. See, lots of Americans were coming home to an angry mom, a worried wife, or a dad who just kept saying he wouldn't pay for the doctor's fees when your eating habits would eventually circle back around to bite you. It kind of did set fear into people's hearts, especially since the arguments were so convincing. Who could deny that they were eating Kentucky Fried Chicken and McDonald's like addicts back then, or even now? That's why there was this newfound room for fusion food or experimental recipes like vegetable aspic cups. Before, you could tell somebody about vegetables that were set in these tomato-flavored gelatins, and they'd just laugh at you. A chilled salad on top of that? But thanks to how easy convenience food culture had made things, with how you could just buy gelatin and frozen veggies whenever you needed, this was actually a really solid and healthy work lunch option. Cornbread and buttermilk is pretty much as Southern as it gets. It's something that's completely a classic comfort food of the South. And cornbread is something that has a deeply rich history in that region anyway, almost as rich as the flavor, especially when you pair it with sweet buttermilk. Cornbread is this crumbly bread that's made with cornmeal if you didn't already know. People would typically just have it ready in a cast iron skillet so that it would get those nice little crispy edges that you all love so much. You pair that up with buttermilk, and it adds an entirely new level of richness and texture to the dish that just wasn't there before. Cornbread and buttermilk is a combination that's deeply rooted in Southern culinary traditions. This goes all the way back to the Native American tribes that first taught European settlers how to harvest and cultivate corn and really take advantage of it. The Southern version didn't get its start in life until after the Civil War, which is when cornmeal started to become more widely used, mostly because it was affordable again. Mashed potato pancakes were a really popular way for poor people to last the weeks and months. Next to corn, potatoes were arguably everybody's best friend. This isn't even something that lasted just throughout the Depression. It's something that you could say was true for almost all of the 20th century. Potatoes were one of the most affordable staple crops that were grown in the world, and they could last you for decent chunks of the year. Leftover mashed potatoes might be unappetizing when you leave them just like that, but they could also be turned into a really warm and crispy dish. Plus, unlike yeast-based breads, these mashed potato pancakes didn't really need to be baked or need any special ingredients. They were mostly okay just as they were. They could be made on a wood stove, a coal stove, or even a pan on an open fire. This is one of those dishes that did spectacular with the children as well, and the frying process in particular made the pancakes really crispy. It was actually even better than how we normally make them, if any of these references hold up in reality. The next thing we have on the list is Hoppin' John's soup, which is right out of the classics of soul food in the southern parts of America and all over, really. I say the South because that's where people most commonly associate its origins with. However, the Hoppin' John dish itself was something that was a result of all the Africans that were brought over as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. This dish typically involves black-eyed peas and African rice, but in soup form, it works just as well with mushrooms, basic vegetables like bell peppers, and spices. This is one of the best soups you could find yourself making in the winter, especially if you live in areas where the temperature really drops to bone-chilling levels. It's so hearty and warm that the dish just screams pure comfort in every way and form. It was a really popular appetizer on a lot of restaurant menus, and it was amazing as a lunch too, but this is a textbook example of an old head recipe. You wouldn't remember it, and your parents probably don't either if they're a little on the young side, but I'm sure anyone's grandparents would remember having this, or at least hearing about it in the days when it was still one of the trendiest soups around. Homemade vegetable pancakes were a Depression-era favorite for stretching limited ingredients. The beauty of pancakes in general is that you could throw in anything you had lying around, from vegetables and fruits to nuts and chocolate. But for veggie pancakes, people usually turned to carrots, potatoes, onion, and zucchinis. They were a great way to get something warm and filling on the table without needing a lot of ingredients. They were easy to make, cheap, and full of flavor thanks to the caramelized veggies. They could be served for breakfast, lunch, or dinner since they were so versatile. Plus, they were a sneaky way to get kids to eat their vegetables. Anything in pancake form will be eaten in a matter of seconds. These homemade vegetable pancakes were a resourceful way to show just how creative people could get in hard times. And on the upside, they were fun to make and even more fun to eat. Let's take a moment and admire the moms of the last century. They were creative, never failing in trying to make their kids healthy and happy. Always on the go, always trying to make the best possible meals for entire families. These homemade vegetable pancakes are the perfect example of that. I mean, just thinking about putting veggies in pancakes makes me want to barf. But hey, when all you had in your pantry were veggies, you had to make some use of them. Potato patties are a creative and delicious way to utilize leftover ingredients, transforming simple mashed potatoes into something special. Mixed with eggs and a little flour to help bind them, seasoned with salt, pepper, and often additional flavors like finely chopped onions or herbs, these patties are then shaped into rounds. The next step involves pan-frying them in a little oil until each side turns golden brown and crispy, creating a delightful contrast to the soft interior. Each batch can be made efficiently, serving many students without requiring extensive cooking time. They can be featured as a vegetarian entree or a side dish, complemented by various dips and sauces that enhance their flavor. This versatility makes them an invaluable addition to the school menu. Indiana took fancy to another level with their breaded pork tenderloin sandwich. Basically, the sandwich was a large piece of pork tenderloin that was breaded, then fried and served up on a bun. Created by a restaurateur named Nick Feinstein, he took the idea of veal sandwiches and replaced it with pork. The sandwich found great success in Indiana, achieving legendary status in the state. Ravioli sandwiches are an unconventional, playful lunch option that taps into the beloved flavors of Italian cuisine while embracing the convenience of a sandwich. These emerged likely in response to the popularity of canned ravioli introduced by Chef Boyardee in the 1930s. The sandwich involves placing canned ravioli, filled with meat or cheese, between slices of bread, which can be toasted or grilled to meld the flavors and add a textural contrast to the soft ravioli filling. Known in some places as Italian sloppy joes or ravioli hero, these sandwiches gained a following among budget-conscious college students and anyone appreciating the melding of comforting Italian flavors with the easy handheld format of a sandwich. Vienna sausages, those little canned sausages, made a splash in the US after being developed in Europe. They're soft, mildly salty, and come packed in broth, perfect for quick snacks or simple meals like stews and casseroles. They caught on thanks to their convenience and the fact that they could sit on a shelf forever, becoming a post-war pantry staple. However, their popularity has dipped due to growing skepticism about canned meats and increasing health consciousness among consumers, who now often opt for fresher, less processed meat options. While they might not be the go-to they once were, Vienna sausages still have their fans, particularly in areas like the South where they're often featured in traditional recipes. Number 10. Hot Dog Day. The Frankfurter was beef and pork, 6 inches long, served in a soft white bun with a paper boat under it to catch the drip. 2 foil packets of mustard and 1 of ketchup came on the side. Hot Dog Day was every other Thursday in most American districts, and the line moved faster on Hot Dog Day than any other day of the month because your tray took 30 seconds to plate. You could open both packets, squeeze the mustard down the length of the dog like a yellow seam, and finish the whole sandwich in 4 bites. By 2014, the federal sodium standards had cut the cafeteria Frankfurter from your menu because the cured meat carried too much sodium per ounce. A few schools held on for a year or two with a turkey hot dog substitute, but the kids did not bite. The hot dog tray was retired. Every one of those lunches carried a kitchen with it, a person who stood at the stove or the counter and put something together because people needed to eat, and there was no time to fuss. If one of them brought back a noon meal you have not thought about in years, write it down in the comments so it does not disappear twice. And if you are new here, subscribe so you catch the next time we go looking for what America used to eat.